Welcome to Living 4D with Paul Chek. Today's guest is the founder of PtEnhance, Gary Crozier. Gary has been involved in the fitness industry for over 25 years as a practitioner, innovator, and software developer. He has a passion for healing, self-growth, and discovery, which all started with his own rehabilitation from a life of extreme pain. His journey included 16 major surgeries, including a facial reconstruction and spinal fusion, overcoming lower body paralysis, toxic mold poisoning, chronic fatigue syndrome, and a host of other challenges. In the year 2000, Gary was named International Trainer of the Year, and since then he has become an innovator in the fitness industry, shifting the paradigm of the industry a decade and a half ago by creating PtEnhance, the first online fitness and health coaching software for health and fitness professionals.
Hi, everybody. Today you'll get to meet Gary Crozier, founder of PtEnhance.com, a web-based system designed to greatly enhance any healthcare or exercise professional's ability to design effective exercise programs for everybody from the seriously injured to the average person all the way to the world's most elite athletes. But the story of Gary's very challenging journey in the medical system, the many serious problems he had with intense chronic pain, what happened when he met me in 1997, and the 16 surgeries that followed, is a true story of someone going through many painful lessons from the pain teacher all the way to being a successful dream weaver. Gary Crozier's story is one of commitment to his own healing that ultimately led Gary to creating the world's most powerful, effective online management system and support system for health and exercise professionals worldwide. As you listen to this powerful story, you are sure to learn a lot about how to turn pain and challenges into real opportunity. Yes, you too can get out of pain, become inspired, and do exactly what you'd love to do to make a great living. I'm confident there is something important in Gary's story for each and every one of you. Enjoy my conversation with a true spiritual warrior that walked the hell of pain only to get healthy, find his life's mission, create his dream, and improve the entire world of health and exercise management. Welcome to Living 4D, everybody. Today I've got a very exciting guest for you, and the topic today is the pain teacher to dream weaver. How to turn challenges into opportunity. The guest we have today is a longtime friend of mine, someone I have deep love and respect for. Him and I have been through a lot together. We've worked together not only through a lot of Gary's very serious health challenges and structural problems, but we have grown our businesses together. And Gary and I met in 1997 in Auckland, New Zealand. And Gary, welcome to Living 4D.
Oh, thanks, Paul. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate showing me around the place. It's great to get out of the apartment. I was getting a bit feral down there. So,
yes.
I mean, this beautiful location you've got here and have the experience of everything. It's pretty neat.
Gary just got to tour our new home, our rainbow home, and our 14-acre property, and my office and house and gym, and so it's the opposite of what most people are experiencing right now, isn't it?
Yeah. I was thinking,
COVID,
my mind's still getting blown just walking around here after being sort of stuck in my 2-bedroom apartment down in the village there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I can share it with you, and in many ways you helped me get here. So Thank you, and we'll talk all about that. So we were talking. Earlier, we were recording earlier, and then my gardener came up with the tractor and made a hell of a lot of noise, so we started over. But Gary was telling the story of how we met, and I was talking about how I had to leave the United States because I couldn't get enough turnout to pay the bills at my workshops in the beginning, because the Americans, when I started surveying people and asking, why aren't you coming to these workshops? And what was happening is I was getting the most elite people. So I'd put on a class and I'd have like the physical therapists and strength coaches and athletic trainers from professional sports teams and big organizations. And I would say to them, well, how come none of your coworkers are here? And they all said the same thing, because they found out you didn't have a college degree and they didn't believe you could teach them anything. I said, well, why'd you come then? They said, well, I read your brochure, and there's no way anybody that didn't know what they were doing could have even written what you put in there. And it was all very interesting to me. But as many of you know from some of my sharings on the podcast, I ended up going through a bankruptcy and I was stuck. I had, no option, but I had two offers come to me, one from Australia and one from New Zealand at the same time, one from a massage school in Adelaide, Australia, and another one from a guy that was on the New Zealand Olympic speed skating team. I forgot his name. I think his first name was Shane. But his parents owned a beautician school, and he really wanted me to come to Auckland and teach scientific core training and scientific back training. Back then, it was scientific abdominal training. So he set it up. And that's when actually, it was later that you found out, because I already had been there for a while and had a batch of students. So I was teaching a Czech level 3.
Yep.
And so I'd probably been in New Zealand for a couple of years by then. I think I went over there in 95.
Okay, yeah, probably makes sense.
And so then you were there with me in 97. So why don't you tell them, Gary, the story of how we hooked up?
Yeah, well, I originally got into your work through Charles Poliquin, because obviously you guys were doing work in the early 90s together.
Right,
and
yeah.
I was just such a mess, and I had, I'd gone through so many different doctors, and I thought, this is a guy I've got to work with. And I happened to look on your schedule, and you were running your level 3 down there in Auckland. I thought, shit, maybe I can, get some treatment from you. So I rang up Greg. I was in Australia and Sydney at the time, and he listened to my story and what was going on with me, and sort of there was a long pause at the end of it. And he said, I actually think you'd be really good as a case study for the level 3.
Yeah.
Can you get over here? And I couldn't. I didn't really know how I'd get over there, but I just said yes, as I tend to, and figured it out. So I ended up selling a car and doing a few things and a few days later I was on a plane to Auckland, and they were up in Kaiba Pass there at the top of Auckland City,
Right.
with Vince and Femke's.
Right, in their
gym.
studio.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
It's flashback time. So that was 1997. And so Gary sold his car. And at that time, my hourly rate was $2.50 an hour. And so knowing what he needed, I knew he wouldn't be able to afford me to do a full assessment at full pay. So I gave him a very discounted rate so that he could come be a student, be a case study. But I did a full Czech practitioner level 4 quality assessment on him. And so the interesting thing was, when I totaled up my bill, it was exactly how much money you had in your pocket.
Yeah, it was. I was sweating like a Cuban in customs going through that course, because I was sitting down the back doing the math, and I'm thinking I'm like paying per hour.
Yeah.
And again, I figured, well, we'll just figure something out. But I didn't kind of expect that. I thought, oh, maybe I have to, work in Auckland for a bit and get a job and pay it off, But yeah, it was like I had all sorts of things going through my head. But
I'm sure, and so the fun part of the story, that part is that so I finished it off, and Gary said, well, when I told him what he owed me, he pulled out a pile of $100 bills, 23 of them. He said, that's all the money I've got. I said, that's all the money you've got. Do you have enough money to get home? No. He says, that's it. I said, you don't have money for food? I said, wow. I said, okay, well, we can't have that. But the back line is that while I was teaching the course, which is a 9-day course, almost every time I would ask the students questions and they couldn't answer the questions, Gary would pipe up. So he'd raise his hand, and he'd be standing there laying half naked on a table, and he'd raise his head, and then he would tell me the answer. And I'm like, damn, how can this guy be answering these questions? These are level 3 Czech practitioners. They've had, they're in their 3rd year of training, and it's very intensive training. And this guy's answering their questions, and he's an ex-bar bouncer, rugby player, mechanic, plumber, and I'm like, this guy's got his brain on, especially after like 20 concussions playing rugby. And so I said to Gary, okay, I'll make you a deal. I said, you obviously really should be a Czech professional because you're cut out for it. I said, there's no way you could be answering these questions if you weren't supposed to be here. I realized at that time that the universe had brought us together. And so I said, okay, Gary, here's $300 for this course, and here's $500 for scientific back training. So I went through all the prerequisites to become a Czech professional. And I said, here's my deal for you. Take this money, do all the prerequisites, become a Czech practitioner, because that's what you're supposed to be. Then I said, here's $500 to fly home. Here's some money, a couple $100 or whatever for food. And so a year later, I hadn't heard from Gary in a while. I gave him a very comprehensive program, and I had to refer him to several different types of doctors and therapists because of what I found, which was very comprehensive. Fortunately for Gary, I'd worked with a number of cases like his over the years, because I used to, my specialty is medical failure, so I get weird, interesting cases from all over the world coming to me. But so I a year later, somebody, I think it was Penny, said, "You're not going to believe this. Remember Gary that you evaluated in New Zealand that was really injured and had all those problems?" I said, "Yes. He just won the PT on the Net Personal Trainer of the Year award for writing the best program." And I looked into it because I knew the owners of PT on the Net, and there was thousands of people in the contest. I said, "Well, that just fits my intuition beautifully." But yes, I knew he was meant to be a Czech professional. But when I evaluated you, you had a lot of really complex issues, and you, as you were mentioning before we got cut off by the tractor showing up, you had pain all over your body.
Yeah.
Tell the audience a bit about what you were going through.
It had been a lifelong thing, really. I'd had all sorts of different accidents and traumas, and you almost couldn't put a point in my body where there wasn't pain, and often extreme pain. I had my jaw broken in 8 places, had a baseball bat to the head, had all sorts of different things, earlier prior to getting to see you. And I was an elite level athlete, so I continued playing sport. You just figure out a way.
Yes.
And I didn't kind of appreciate till I met you. Like the wheels were falling off the bus.
Yeah.
Anything I would do was breaking down, and you sort of showed me how I was in that real state of complete decompensation because my body had been trying to compensate for so many years. And it was I have said many times that I feel like you saved my life, because really I was at my last straw, because I'd been to so many different doctors and therapists, and the common thing that I've found in that arena, and after going through your work and studying, and then being able to go on and help people myself as well, I came up earlier on that aspect of with the practitioner, when the practitioner couldn't help you, their ego got in the way, and then they turned it around and would push it basically back onto me.
Make it your fault.
Yeah, so by the time I got to you, I'd had so much of that just from a mental and emotional perspective of all these different practitioners blaming and saying it was all in my head. And some of it was, but yeah. But
when I explain what was going on, they'll really understand that. But so you had a lot of pain. Now, you had a background in bodybuilding, and you played high level rugby, which is, there's the old saying, rugby players eat their dead.
Pretty much.
And I've played rugby, and it's painful. And when you go to Australia and New Zealand and watch elite level rugby players beat the hell out of each other for a couple hours at a time, it's kind of like it's just like being in a mixed martial arts match with a much bigger ring.
They say it's not a contact sport, it's a collision sport.
Yes, it's definitely. It's a concussion-making sport for sure.
Back in my day, the head tackles weren't illegal, so you could do stiff arms and coat hangers and things like that.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's like, it was the Wild West, really.
Yeah, and by the time you got there, I'd already consulted for I don't know how many rugby teams, but I ended up consulting several of the main big-time rugby union and rugby league teams and helping them with many of these kinds of traumas that nobody knew what to do with. But when I evaluated you, you had some really serious complications. So just for those of you listening that may be able to follow this, Gary had what's called a crossbite. So if you want to know what a crossbite is, it's a growth and development disorder, which means one or both of your parents were malnourished, so the gene transcription does not copy properly. So parts of the body can be longer or shorter. Things don't fit properly. And crossbites are not common by any means, but in a highly technical practice like I used to have, I probably would get, I'd say 2 or 3 a year. And they all had the same story as you. I'd seen tons of people, even dentists, which is weird, and nobody even picked up on it. So part of what I teach in level 3 training for Czech professionals is head, neck, jaw, and cranial nerve function and all the things that have to do with the mechanics of the head, neck, and jaw. And so when I evaluated Gary's occlusion, how his teeth fit together, I noticed immediately that his jaw was shifted one full tooth laterally. So if you want to get an example of what that's like, just take your bottom incisor tooth, which is the sharp, pointy one, and shift it so it's inside the tooth above it. Just shift it one full tooth to either side and imagine what it's like to try to eat, talk, swallow, and function with your jaw. So what had happened is one side of his mandible was longer than the other side. So it pushed all of his teeth to the side. And whenever you do that, due to the intimate muscular relationships between the cranium, the jaw, and the upper cervical spine, and even all the way down to the collarbones, because the submandibular strap muscles go all the way to your collarbone, it creates a head that won't sit properly because the body has to try to figure out how to get those teeth to fit together, because if the teeth don't fit together, every time you close your mouth, which is on average 4,000 times a day, they hit and slide because they don't fit, so they start grinding. And so it creates a huge survival reaction in the body because it's really a threat to your life. And so it winds people up at the core like a primal defense mechanism where there's something going on, but they can't put their finger on it. It'd be like if you were scared all the time but didn't know why at a very deep level. And so I realized right away he had a growth and development disorder, and so I had to send him to an orthodontist, which ultimately resulted in a long number of surgeries, didn't it?
Yeah, I've had, 6 facial surgeries now.
Yeah.
Amongst the 16 in total.
And so, 16 total surgeries. And here's a true story for you. I hadn't seen Gary in a couple years, and I'd written his programs and give him, the direction that he needed to continue his therapy. And he got to the right doctors and he had many surgeries. And I came back to New Zealand to teach a series of courses and workshops and check training programs. And I was giving a one-day lecture, and Gary sat in the front row.
I remember that.
For the whole day. And I did not even recognize him because after all that facial surgery, you look so different. I'd been staring right at you in the front row the whole day and just thought it was another person in the chair. But then when you came up and talked to me afterwards, I was like, oh my God, Gary, you look so different. Because his whole face had been reconstructed. His teeth fit together and it changed the way you look so much. It literally stunned me. I'm like, I've never seen anything like that. If you listen to my podcast with any regularity, you've now heard of a number of cases I've been involved in that were serious, like Gary Crozier's was. Surely you've also come to realize that there's no replacement for organically and biodynamically grown foods if you want to be healthy and make sure your food and drink dollars are going to companies that are supporting the ecosystem of our planet. I realize many of you live busy lives and probably have little time to hunt down organic farms and farmers markets, but it doesn't have to be hard to consume real organic foods and drinks. If you'd like to add real certified organic foods and drinks to your diet that is easy to use, fast, and nutritious, there's no better place to start than Organifi. Organifi offers a wide variety of excellent, good-tasting, easy-to-prepare superfoods, protein powders, and drinks that my family, friends, and clients use regularly and love. You can taste and feel the nutrition right away, and I know you're going to love Organifi's great products. Go to Organifi.com, that's Organifi.com, and on checkout, use the code all caps, capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K 20 to get your 20% discount on any purchase. To get to know Drew Canoli, the founder of Organifi, listen to my podcast episode 64, Drew Canoli, You Be You. Enjoy Organifi. Other things, aside from all sorts of imbalances with core and muscle imbalance syndromes and stuff, I found another issue with him that's very unusual in that I do tests to determine the symmetry of the pelvis. And one of the tests I do is I put a special hip level on you and I measure you standing And if the hips are not level, I know I have to measure the length of the femur and the tibia, because you could have a congenital growth and development bony leg length difference, which throws the whole system into a torsion and can lead to scoliosis and all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
But Gary was way out of balance. Like, if I remember right, it was almost like an inch.
Yep.
You were almost an
Huge.
inch lower on one hip than the other. And so then I said, okay, now I need you to sit on this bench. And I use a real hard weightlifting bench so that when they sit into it, their butt doesn't sink into it. And I remeasured them and it was the same. And I went, wow, we've got a deeper problem here than just a leg length discrepancy. You may have a congenital abnormality in your pelvis. And then didn't you come back to California and go to my buddy Daryl Curl and
Yep.
we did a specialized scanogram?
Yeah.
So we did a medical grade X-ray called a scanogram that measures the bones to their actual size. And sure enough, it was 16 millimeters or something?
Yeah, it was big. Yeah, and it was funny because I'd been saying to doctors and therapists all my life, it feels like I've got one leg shorter than the other. And it was like, well, no, you haven't. And it was literally, I think it was that first day, I think you were doing Atlas testing and stuff, and you picked it up straight away. I was like, wow, that was worth the price of admission for a start.
Well, exactly. It pays to go to someone that knows what they're doing, right? They're just very hard to find, which is one of the reasons why I built the whole check system, is because I traveled all over the world and I saw personal trainers didn't have a clue what they were doing. They were just doing what everybody else was doing and what they were reading out of magazines, but they had no knowledge of anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, biomechanics, kinematics, arthrokinematics, psychology. It was really, what you and I call a rent-a-friends sort of deal, and just torturing the shit out of people with exercise. And, the physical therapists were all just ultrasounding people and, doing, forgive me if you're a physical therapist, but just doing stuff that isn't well thought out and often not even productive. And so I saw that there was a worldwide problem. And, I had spent so much of my life studying very intensely, traveled the whole world working with the top rehabilitationists in Europe and in the Czech Republic. And, I had a lot of clinical experience even then. And I also have a long background as an athlete and in strength training, so I could put all these different fields together. And so anyhow, when we identified that you had this, so you'd flown back and I wanted to confirm it on x-ray, and one of my friends is a doctor who's very skilled at these things. So we found out exactly what it was, and we got you a butt lift. So with a case like that, you have to use a butt lift, because if a person like that sits down, one side of his pelvis is, he was significantly smaller, and so it would tip his whole spine. It would be like if you sat leaning sideways about 20 degrees, how quickly your back would just be in pain. And Gary was doing heavy weightlifting and heavy athletic training with a crossbite and a serious asymmetrical pelvis, which means you're getting torsion from two ends of the spine.
No wonder I fell apart. And from that moment on, no one ever sat beside me on the bus again, which was great, because you often have to adjust it. So it would look like you're, sort of picking something or whatever, or shifting your undies when you're on a bus. I would get strange looks, and it'd be a jam that, I'd be working in Sydney City and I was on the bus and people were standing up. They just wouldn't sit down beside me. So.
The strangest things happen when you have these problems, right? Stuff you'd never think about.
It was hilarious, yeah. So I never had to worry about being squashed or cramped on a bus seat ever again.
Yeah. And I know we had all sorts of, I found core control problems in you and a lot of postural imbalances, muscle imbalances. Of course, the whole body was just completely out of balance, right? Yeah. Inside and out.
Well, also, by the time I'd seen you, I'd had multiple surgeries, and I was, from a young age, I was cesarean for a start, so I didn't go through the birthing canal and get that great bacteria. And then from birth, I had really bad bronchitis, so they pumped me full of antibiotics my first 3 or 4 years of my life.
Wow!
So that's been an ongoing journey. So that was all tying into everything by the time I came to see you. Mm-hmm. So I think the analogy you gave me was, it was like someone had stuck me on an Amtrak and I'd been hit by a train.
Yeah.
Inside and out.
Yeah. And so we had to rebuild you at every direction.
Yeah.
You got the whole shebang, diet and lifestyle, and we went through everything, we worked together for quite a number of years to progressively get you through that. Even when you were back at work and things, we were still working through. And, it's a very intensive process to go through that much pain, that much surgery. And as you were saying, the anesthesia didn't work on you, so you had to end up having surgeries with no anesthesia.
That was probably the most painful thing I've ever had in my life, was the 4 mouth surgeries.
Yeah.
That was just horrific.
Yeah.
But, again, as you're saying, pain being the which we've got on the board here, pain is, growth waiting to happen. It's certainly, if I hadn't have been through what I went through, I wouldn't be sitting here now. It's all necessary, and I wouldn't have dreamed that I would have had the life that I've had and be doing what I'm doing now, and even just sitting here with you.
It's amazing. There's always a bigger plan. That's really what spirituality is about: is growing your sense of connection progressively greater till you realize that you're an expression of the entire universe and what creates it, and that there's a real invisible harmony to everything. It's, part of it, I think, part of the challenge we all face is that we have to learn to listen to our pain when it arrives, because it means we're going off course.
Yeah.
And we have to get to the point where we realize our ego is not nearly as reliable as the witness behind it.
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing for me, and it's interesting. I probably was a slower learner, obviously. That's why I had to have so much pain. But it does, it helps you to sort of separate and have that not so much attachment to what's going on, and that aspect of, from a ego perspective. I like that analogy of, we think that God is our co-pilot, but he's not. He's the pilot and we're the plane. So
exactly.
If I stop trying to drive the plane all the time, maybe life won't be quite so painful, and have some of the experiences that that I went through.
Yes, and so you were there in the fairly early stages of me. I've probably done several hundred now seminars, workshops, and advanced training programs through Australia and New Zealand. I used to go over there for 4 months at a time, and I would go all around Australia, then back to New Zealand, then I'd loop back to Australia and do this twice quite often. So by the time I was done with that, I was completely exhausted.
Yeah, tiring, yeah.
I think I made that trip back and forth to Sydney probably 15 or 18 times.
Well, I can relate now, after having with PtEnhance and starting in Australia, then moving here. In the first several years of the business, we were going backwards and forwards because of visas and different things.
Yes,
and
I remember that.
I can totally relate. It's definitely.
I totally had empathy for you. Like, oh my God.
It's a real hope. But in those, when I started, there was less than a dozen or a dozen and a half Czech practitioners in Australia and the South Pacific.
Right.
So that was very early days down there.
Yeah. And so back in those days, the whole exercise industry was very different than it is today. As most of you probably know, I'm the one that introduced the Swiss ball to the gym industry. And so Swiss balls were something totally novel. And, almost everything you did in the gym was bodybuilding. It was all hammer strength, Cybex, Nautilus, and, old funky stuff and old outdated equipment. And so you've seen me, create, most people don't know this, I invented the concept of the adjustable cable system, up and down, and the cable systems that are bilateral and multi-cable systems, and worked with the Fitness Works in New Zealand to produce the first models of those things,
I remember
which
that. Yep.
now are worldwide industry standard, and most people haven't got a clue that I developed that either. But you were there with me when I was really revolutionizing the entire concept of what functional exercise is, and giving the scientific basis for why what people were doing in gyms and a lot of rehab programs was really just wrong, period.
Yeah.
And so you got to watch that whole revolution go on,
Yeah, it was interesting, because when I started using the Swiss ball in the gym that I was training at, I'd had to be locked up in the office, and I was the only one that had the key and was allowed to bring it out, and no one else was allowed to use it. And it was funny because, all the trainers looked at me like I was an idiot.
Yes, I know the feeling well.
Fast forward, 6 or 8 years, and they're all using them. Not necessarily correctly, but they're kind of using them. So it's been to me, it feels like I've kind of been a real privilege to have watched your growth, but also through what I ended up doing and working with PtEnhance and the practitioners, and I've now worked with thousands and thousands of particularly Czech practitioners and personal trainers and health and fitness professionals, just to see how this all has grown. And it's amazing, just the energy from shifting those paradigms and kind of challenging what is going on, which obviously wasn't easy for you at all.
No.
And the arguments and the battles and all the different things that sort of been through.
Everything from being told I was a complete fucking moron to doctors and therapists and people with fancy degrees going at me in conferences and to their chagrin debating me, because I have never lost a debate.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for them when they come. And the thing that made it hard for them is they couldn't wrap their head around how I could know these things without a college degree, right? So it was worse than hell to get beat by me in a debate in front of thousands of people or hundreds of people, because this guy that just cooked you with your 3 or 4 master's degrees and your PhD has no degree. But there's no replacement for common sense. There's no replacement for paying attention, right?
For sure. I mean, I left school at 15. I didn't actually finish high school in New Zealand.
Yeah.
You don't graduate. They have different qualifications. I got the basic qualification and then left school because I was, with what I was going through, I had a lot of illness through my teenage years as well. And so my high school, I was only there for probably a year and a half of the 3 years that I did high school, because the rest of the time I was home, with some illness or problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to get out. And my dad said, you can leave school, mate, but you need to get a trade. So I opened up the paper, and the first job was a plumber and gas fitter. So I got that, and that was the end of my traditional schooling career. I obviously did studies later in life and in the health and fitness field and whatnot. But a lot of stuff obviously through you as well. But common sense is
not so common.
Not so common nowadays.
Paradoxically,
even more so. Like right now, I'm sort of seeing
right, the whole COVID thing. It's like, are you that gullible? You really? I mean, it's just like we don't need to beat down that track. But I'll tell you what, it's really amazing for me to watch how people fall hook, line, and sinker for so much lies and so much manipulation, and don't ask critical questions, don't look into it, trust what they see on television and on the radio and in newspapers. And it's like, you guys don't realize that there's only about 5 people that own the entire media network worldwide, and they are very, very involved for financial reasons in exactly what you think is going on. And much, much more. But, what's an interesting part of the story that I'd like to share, as I'm trying to remember when it was, you'll probably know. I remember when you first came to me. How many years had you been working as a check professional before you came to me with the idea for PtEnhance?
It was about 6 years.
6 years, yeah. Was that the time that I met you in Sydney after somebody had died and you were a little bit turned inside out?
Yeah.
One of your friends died, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was interesting actually, and that whole thing about how life moves and one door closes and another door opens. I had a business that I was involved with in Thailand, and my best friend was my business partner.
Right.
And he was murdered.
Right.
And that I lost everything. Lost basically the whole business.
Yeah.
And that was at the same time that I had sort of come up with this concept and had approached you, and sort of we were starting to, I guess, what was the rumblings of what became PtEnhance at that time.
What year would that have been?
That was 2006.
Okay, so that's the same year I started my PPS Success Mastery program.
Yeah.
So Gary approached me and he said, Paul, I have an idea that I want to put in front of you, and I think it could really help a lot of people, and it could be viable for us as a business. And I said, hit me, baby. And so, by now I knew Gary very well. I knew he had developed a tremendous amount of skill as a check professional. I'd met people that he'd worked with and helped. So I knew Gary knew what he was doing, clear and simple, and he lived it thoroughly. So he knew what I taught probably better than most people out there. And Gary came up with the idea of creating a web-based system that people could use to design exercise programs, manage their business, and have a very comprehensive library of all the exercises I teach, which now there's like over 2,000 exercises in there.
Yeah.
And so that at any level, from pure rehab all the way to the most elite athletes using kettlebells and functional equipment stuff, the personal trainer or anybody, physical therapist, check professional, could actually use the system to design their program. It would have videos for each of the exercise, and it would be a landing spot for the client to go pick up their new program. They could watch all the videos and they could interface with their trainer, and they could use it as reinforcement. So even if the therapist or coach or trainer was saying, okay, you need to go home and do these exercises, they could then go to their website, which the exercise or healthcare professional gave them a pass to, and then they could get online management. So it took the disconnection out between personal sessions, and it made it a lot easier for them to remember things, and it gave health and exercise professionals a very scientific structure. You built a lot of advanced technology in there for rating the exercises, biomotor abilities. Our whole HLC2 assessment is in there for the professionals, and it calculates the stress loads. I mean, Gary did a lot of revolutionary software invention and technology and spent years. And God, what have you spent? A couple of $1 million on this thing?
Yeah, we've spent several $1 million on it now, and I'm into over 20,000 man hours into the software. You know, that's what I'm holding up my hand, and it's a circle. That's what I knew about software when we started.
Yes,
you know, and do nothing. Know a little bit now,
which is a great component of the story, because a lot of people would have given up right there. It would be kind of like a doctor deciding he didn't want to be a doctor anymore and going into organic farming. He'd have to start from completely the ground up, and his first thought would be, how am I going to make a living, right?
Yeah.
I have to, be like saying, a farmer saying, I'm going to go be a surgeon. You got 4 years of basic training before you even get into your surgical residency. But you took this thing on, really, which is quite amazing, because most people wouldn't realize how advanced the technology you were developing was for the level of technology we had available in 2006.
Everyone said I was crazy, had a rocks in my head, which I know you've been told many times.
Yeah, but I didn't say you were crazy.
No. I thought I was crazy sometimes, but and it's that thing that we sort of talked about before, and I see it as we were going around your house here today. You were talking about the power of manifestation.
Yes.
And that's something that kind of was always in me, but I think having met you and the different experiences I had with you, and also honestly just what I went through in life, it should have showed me that there was, and I don't know what God is, but there is definitely some force greater than us guiding us and moving us through life.
I don't know what it is either. I just call it God.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's definitely, and
I know it's not an it.
And seeing that and seeing the flow of how things move through, because once you said yes, it was that same situation as in Auckland, New Zealand, however many years before. We didn't have the money, so I had to go out and raise the money. Yeah. And so to start, so we needed, quite a large chunk of money to start with. And I can remember my buddy saying to me, like, how are you going to raise that, Gaz? And I said, I don't know, because I knew nothing about raising money. I said, but it'll happen. And it's that whole thing of being able to trust and let go and move with what is coming through us, wanting to expand through us. I often ask myself, is this coming through me or from me?
Right.
And often my ego is if it's from me, it's trying to push things out. And somewhere, somehow, and I'm sure you were probably a big spark of that, allowing this to come through, because it's getting down to the point where we've got, a short period of time to get this money, because time's going on and going on. And
Paleo Valley makes some incredible superfood bars that are a lot different than what most people think of as a superfood bar. I've got Autumn Smith, the creator of their superfood bars, right here to tell you about them. Autumn, what is so unique about your awesome superfood bars?
Well, our superfood bars are unique because not only do they not contain refined sugar or GMOs or any of the freaky additives that you'll find in most bars, or gluten or anything, but they're just whole foods. They're low in sugar. They're made with superfoods like ginger and broccoli and acerola cherry and collagen from grass-fed and finished animals, which we all know is like a fountain of youth. And so the best part about them, though, is probably the flavor. They come in chocolate and apple cinnamon, and we have so many more delicious flavors to come, and they're easy to put in your bag to feed for you with your kids. And I hope you love them all as much as I do. All you have to do to get access is go to paleovalley.com, and you can use the code CHECK15, that's lowercase CHEK 15, and you can get 15% off. And I hope you love them.
That's awesome. And just so you know, that's PALEO Valley.com. And I know you're going to love Autumn's superfood bars.
I get a call I did your very first golf biomechanic course
All right.
in 97. So I was a golf biomechanic as well, and
Cool.
used to write for the Australian Golf Magazine and work with one of the top coaching pros,
Cool.
and we used to work together. And so he gave me a call and he said he had a client that wanted to work with me. And this particular client lived on Terry Hills Country Club golf course, which, if anyone in Sydney knows, is one of the richest courses in Australia. So I don't usually go and see people, but for some reason I thought I will. So I'm driving there. It's pouring down with rain on a Friday afternoon, and I rock up and I go and knock on the door and there's no answer. So I think, bugger this, I'm just going to go and jump back in the car. And as I'm about to drive off, my windows down, I hear this, hello. And anyway, so I walk back and I go and see it. And she said, oh, sorry, I'm on, it was on the other side of the house. And when I walked in, it was like your place, this huge mansion.
Yeah.
And
hey, I don't have a mansion. I just have a nice big house.
It's beautiful.
I got lots of family in here.
And I started talking to her and stuff, and she said, oh, you should write a book about this stuff. I said, well, actually, look, this guy, Paul Check has, and explained about the book. And then I said, oh, and also I have this business idea. And she said, oh, you should talk to my husband. And I won't mention their names, but I ended up, her husband was the financial advisor for one of the richest men in Australia.
Wow.
So they were going to be the original investors. And they split their time between Sydney and San Francisco. And I was over here doing some filming work with you, and I went up to do the final deal up in San Francisco, and it didn't feel right.
Oh.
So I said no. And again, like everyone that I knew was, or not everyone, but most people saying, you're crazy, they want to, there's the money, and it just didn't feel the right energy.
Yeah.
So I said no, and
Smart.
yeah, and left and came back to Australia. And again, my roommate Mark said to me, well, what are you going to do, Gaz? I mean, that's pretty scary, isn't it? And I just had this feeling, like I said, I don't know, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And about a week and a half later, I get a call from my dad.
Oh.
And he's dead now, but bless him. But he was had been in the hospital seeing his friend, and they'd known each other for 70 years.
Wow.
So they grew up together, and his friend had had a stroke. And so he was in there talking to his friend, Ian, and Ian's son, Paul, was over from Australia and was sitting there with my dad, and my dad wasn't the most tactful person. And he said to Paul, he said, you're looking a lot rounder than when I saw you last, which basically means you're looking like a fat bugger. Yeah. And he said, oh, yeah, I am. I should probably get a trainer or something. And he said to me, well, what's Gary doing? Dad said, oh, well, Gary's a trainer. And then he said, oh, what's Gary doing? Like, where is he? And he said he's in Sydney. And Dad never really understood what we were doing with the business. And he said, oh, he's got this internet magazine sort of thing he's trying to get off the ground.
Yeah.
And so Paul said to him, look, give me a call when I get back. And it turned out that we live right next door to each other. Encinitas Lacadia here in San Diego.
Wow.
I was in South Kilkeel, and he was in Harbourwood. So it's literally the suburbs attached to each other.
Wow.
So putting the story in context, I'd met Paul once in my parents' kitchen when I was 15. So I'm trying to think of how to build a rapport, and I speak to him on the phone, and so I pick up the phone and, trying to get this dialogue and stuff going. And it's that whole thing again of like, I'm not doing any of this really. It wasn't me that was doing it. And he says, look, stop, Gaz. He said, any mate of Dad's is a mate of mine. And it turned out Paul was the national manager for the investment branch of the Commonwealth Bank, which is one of Australia's largest banks.
Wow.
And he had like 400 employees or so underneath him. And he had a couple of guys that had made a whole bunch of money in software doing something similar like we kind of had done in the superannuation or retirement funds industry, which Andrew and Bruce now.
Yeah.
And so he said, look, I'll connect you because, they're perhaps looking to invest in something. So as it turned out, I rang up Andrew, and Andrew was a young guy who was really into fitness. Bruce was an older guy, one of his mentors in the previous business. He was a Kiwi, and he had a Czech practitioner as a trainer.
Wow.
And they became the original major investors in the company.
Because back then, there wasn't that many Czech practitioners compared to today.
Oh, heck no. So it's that aspect that people say, how did you do it? Well, I actually didn't do it. I really didn't do anything. If anything, probably what I did is as much as I could get out of my own way.
Yeah, so that's what Jung calls a synchronicity. And you had several of them, and they come to us when we're open to them and we can see what's right in front of us. But, I think as we grow spiritually, we come to realize that the whole universe is really a synchrony. And if we're having too much pain or challenge in our lives, it usually means that we're choosing to be out of harmony with the flow of the Tao, or the flow of nature, or the flow of the energy in the environment, or the flow of the pulse of the planet, however you want to categorize it. But so you launched this. It took a lot of time and a lot of money. I remember meeting investors with you, and basically what Gary did is he licensed my intellectual property and downloaded my brain and put it into software and made it so that thousands and thousands of people could actually use the knowledge and the technology that I developed to help enhance people's lives. And so where is it at today? Because I know you're going through a major restructuring.
Yeah, so we've been in business now for 13 years,
Yeah.
which is an achievement. And we've just gone through a complete redesign and reskinning of our current platform. And ironically, at the beginning of COVID, we just also decided that we're going to completely rebuild the entire platform from scratch as well. So we wanted to do some improvements and do some different things for our current trainers and customers while we're rebuilding. So call me crazy, but I think, as I was saying to you, I have like 20 odd plus thousand man hours invested into it now. We're now going to jump into probably another 15 to 20,000 man hour project to do the rebuild. So exciting though, because technology continues to shift, and that was the thing. Seeing back then, by the time I started the software company, or just prior to that, I was working with trainers and mentoring them, doing different lecturing and whatnot as well. And what I saw there was there's so many trainers were failing in the industry, and not because they weren't good practitioners. It was really because they didn't have that business type of mind, or that system structure type of mind. And to me, that always looked like, well, there's ways that we can automate this. There's ways that we can help improve and deliver that. And also just the ability to scale. Because, I primarily learnt the coaching model off of you, and that's what we've been teaching now, I guess, for 13 years in the software, is that aspect of working with people and coaching them, and that's where software particularly comes in hand and as a valuable tool, because it allows to automate a lot of that, and allows tracking. Exactly, and just giving that support and allowing you to scale and work with a lot more people. I would say that we'd often, when I talk to trainers, use the simple analogy of, if you're working 30 hours a week is what you can do, say, for example, as a personal trainer. And most personal trainers, that if they're doing that, they're wanting to get as many sessions with a client as they can. So say, for example, you've got 10 clients that you're working with 3 times a week at $100 an hour. There's $3,000 a week, which sounds great. But then you're basically tapped out.
Yes, you are.
What do you do?
It's the ceiling.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we kind of work with trainers and getting the concepts of, that's a PT model. A coaching model is, I'm actually empowering you. I'm educating you, and with the software and the things that we developed, it allows to further improve that education. So now I can still work 30 hours a week, but on a simple model. If I go, well, instead of working with 10 clients 3 times a week, I'm now working with 30 clients once a week. I've firstly mitigated a lot of risk in my business, because if I'm working out, you're working with me 3 times a week and you go away, that's $300. Now 3 people do that, that's $900 I've just lost in my business. And as we're seeing now with COVID and how that, I've always thought the fitness industry was on a faulty model of that, because it's all about in person, and not that everything should be digital or distance wise, but it makes you very vulnerable, as we're kind of seeing now. And you put them on a coaching model, you charge them for your programs, you got your software, even if you just charge them $100 a month, which a lot of our guys and girls do on that model, you've just automatically put $3,000 into your revenue. And you've also mitigated your risk from a training point of view.
And I think, there's a lot of benefits to the program if you're a health or exercise professional, because as you and I both know, one of the biggest challenges all people have that have come through my education system, I don't care what their background or degree is writing a program scientifically. And it was like a lot of my instructors even had a really hard time mastering that. And so you really put technology together to help people do a lot better job of assessing people, writing the programs, managing the data, giving them visual input to master the exercises, follow-up reinforcement. You have business management, you have scheduling in there. I mean, it's a really like a it's kind of like having your own, like James Bond has his money penny, I have my penny, and you made a penny for everybody else.
Yeah, and that was the vision back in the day. I didn't quite appreciate what it was going to take to do that.
No, yeah.
But,
Well, being God's really hard work.
It can be fun times too, though.
Yeah, it can, yeah.
But, that was that aspect, and also having it something delivered at a low monthly service. So not having to have a whole bunch of different softwares. And, it was a challenge.
Yeah.
Many, many times, we were on the brink.
Yes.
And that's that aspect of having that faith and that kind of that belief and that vision and being able to let go
Yeah.
of how I think it should be.
Yeah.
And then allow it to be what it is.
Yeah. And, you and I have been together now as friends and collaborators, and me cooperating with you because obviously I have a stake in PtEnhance with my intellectual property in there. But we've been riding this wave for a long time now, 17 years, right?
We met 97.
Yeah.
So
you said 23 years.
Yeah, 23 years.
23 years.
Yeah.
So Gary and I have really kind of in many ways grown up together. We've had many of the same challenges. We've both had bottom of the barrel money issues. We've both had women issues. I had mine. I got through mine quicker until I found Penny, and that took care of that. But
I'm a slower learner.
Oh well, I can teach you some tricks. But we've been through all the challenges of staffing and how hard it is to find good people, and we both introduced advanced technology in a market where people had a hard time realizing what the hell we were offering them. And it took people a long time to come around.
Yeah.
And, both of us were told by many people that we were crazy and it would never work. But here we all are, right?
Very true. And I think that's, such a great point that all of us can do this if we can kind of let go and trust. And there's a lot of, and I'm not sort of meaning to, or not really, going to the whole COVID thing, but there's a lot of fear and a lot of lack of trust.
Yes.
And, we've actually been really busy throughout this period of time and talking to a lot of trainers and going, okay, that's the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to let go, surrender to the aspect that's gone.
Yeah.
And learning to pivot.
Yeah.
And opening up to what's inside that wants to come through and expand from us
right.
or through us. Because at different times, people, when I tell the different stories, they go, oh, wow, that's amazing. How did you do all that? And it's, again, like I sort of said before, I'm not doing it. The times when things happen is, for me, is when you allow it and let it to come through. To me, it's what is wanting to expand and move through me. And I recognize a lot of time I'm the block to that. And what we're seeing now, it's an opportunity for exactly the same type of thinking. I knew nothing about software at all, but you figure it out. And in the industry now, with not just personal trainers, but health and fitness professionals, because the health and fitness industry has taken a huge, as obviously everyone is right now, a huge hit. But I think it's an amazing time because it's woken people up in a lot of ways to what's going on inside them.
Yes,
so
for sure.
Questioning a lot of things.
Thus the high rates of suicide.
Exactly, yeah. And also, in turn, opening up to the possibilities of other things.
Yes.
And obviously technology is one of those things. I'm not a real technical buff.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that was sitting behind the computer, screaming at the tech team saying, where's the damn button?
Yeah.
And they say, Gary, it's the big orange thing right in the middle of the screen staring you in the face. So I'm not going to throw,
Yeah, but there's a beauty in that too, because I'm that way with computers. I know the programs, they work really well, but God forbid you change one because I'm busy, goddammit, I got shit done, I got to get done, I got deadlines, I don't want to have to learn a new software program, tell me how to work this thing. But the point I'm making is because you came in with that sort of virgin mindset, didn't really know what the hell was going on, you were a great litmus test for the rest of us, because if you could understand it, I could probably understand it. And I think that might be the gift hiding, the silver lining behind the cloud of gray of technology is not something I'm into, but here I go.
Yeah.
But
you learn and you do what, to me, I've kind of always, it's like you figure stuff out. I guess being a Kiwi, we're a small nation.
Yes.
And we tend to punch above our weight in the world in most things.
Yes.
And you just figure stuff out. And I think that's really important, that aspect of not just looking at figuring stuff out, just being willing to change and look at things differently.
Yeah.
Because, again, I think right now we're in an amazing time
Mm-hmm.
to be able to. I'm real curious because, there's sort of both sides of the equation. The world's coming to an end or whatever.
That's been happening forever.
Yeah, funnily enough, I've heard that story
Apocalyptic
before.
prophecies.
It sounds familiar.
There have been many of them all the way since the Bible and even before.
But I love to come from a space of curiosity, like, wow, human beings are amazing creatures.
Yeah.
And they're amazingly resourceful.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we don't know because when we haven't created it or it hasn't been created through us.
Yes.
So I'm real curious and excited to see what happens over the next period of time because there's going to be so much creation because there's so much opportunity.
Yes.
Like, myself, when all the different things I went through, the surgeries, the accidents, the horrific pain and whatnot, I met you.
Yeah.
And then the next thing happened and then the training happened and then I, won the International Trainer of the Year and then I got into the software and yada, yada, yada. And it continues to happen. But that's not my story. That's everyone's story.
It is everybody's story, but as we've discussed and as we both know, you have to be brave enough to hold still and not let your fear be your seeing eye dog, or you get trapped in it. You get myopic. And you have to be brave enough to keep your heart open. I think this is why having some kind of spiritual practice to ground you is so important. What was your spiritual practice that got you through all that pain and all these challenges? Like, how do you anchor yourself? What's the keel on your sailboat? What do you turn to when it's looking tough, looking bad, looking scary?
Well, if I kind of backpedal to kind of where it all started, when I was very young, I've had a lot of death in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 6 years old, one of my best friends had a brain tumor and was in a coma for 2 years at home on a respirator before he died.
Wow.
And I used to go and visit him.
Mm-hmm.
And I would talk to him and I kind of wouldn't physically talking to him, but kind of energetically. So I guess I kind of always had some sort of connection there and that question of asking and didn't really know, but seemed to continue to meet people. I started weight training at the age of 11 years old, and the guy that introduced me to it was the guy by the name of Bernie Walsh. And my dad had an old-fashioned grocery store, and I basically grew up in there. I couldn't see over the counter. We used to stand on milk crates to serve. And Bernie was one of the customers. Mm-hmm. Bernie was an ex-professional strongman, and he was also into Eastern philosophies. And this is back when I'm 52, so I was 11, and his kids were going to Steiner schools back then.
Wow.
And
he was tapped in.
Yeah. So I met Bernie, and he would give me all sorts of different books to read, and he gave me my first magazine was the old Iron Man magazine, and back in those days it was black and white, a color cover. The front half was bodybuilding, the back half was Olympic weightlifting. But he was, and even those magazines kind of, I guess through Peri Radar, had a little bit of a spiritual influence to it. Mm-hmm. And Bernie was kind of a spiritual guy, so he kind of connected me with that aspect in myself. But I sort of have never really wanted to drink the Kool-Aid of anything. If it made sense, I would integrate it. If it didn't, I wouldn't.
Right.
So I kind of, over the years, continued to study and just get exposed to stuff. And, the biggest thing for me, I guess, that I've learnt is that coming to the concept of, at the end of the day, everyone and everything is on loan to me.
Yeah, I understand that perspective.
Whether it be for a day, a week, a month, a year, or lifetime.
We
I
die, right?
Yeah.
As Jesus says in the Bible, a rich man can no sooner get to heaven than a camel can get through the eye of a needle. Which means all that comes with you is what you've become. Yeah. Which is really the flow of energy and information, which we call spirit and soul within each of us. And it's not weighable or measurable. At some point it'll be weighable and measurable because they'll be able to convert it into data, right?
Yeah. It's above my pay grade.
Yeah,
at the moment.
Well, the thing is without going into a segue, there's all sorts of challenges with that because a lot of people think they're going to be able to download themselves to a computer, but that's a complete misunderstanding of what it means to truly be a human being. And it makes the assumption that we're really just a data set, which is you get that kind of idea because there's so many left-brainers now looking at the universe as a digital reality, as a simulation. Yeah. And there's some truth to all of those things for sure. But
how do you define the intangibles, though?
You can't. And the other thing is it's part of it is a case of trying to fit life into a box that you've created without realizing you were created by life. So, it's kind of like the old saying, the watch can never figure out its maker.
Yeah.
The maker can figure out the watch, but the watch can't figure out the maker. We're the watch trying to figure out the maker and making big assumptions. Hello, everybody. All of us at the Czech Institute are excited about releasing our new Golf Performance Specialist online training program, and we're happy to be able to offer you a chance to pre-order the course and get a special $100 first access discount, which is available right now. I developed the Golf Performance Specialist program myself because there was no program in the world that offered a holistic, integrated approach to assessing the golf athlete and getting them balanced, healthy, and performing better. Through my career as a rehabilitation and performance specialist, I've worked with a long string of golfers that were injured and suffering performance plateaus that weren't getting results until I applied the integrated holistic approach I share in the Golf Performance Specialist program, which teaches you how to customize your programs to each individual's needs. Most of them, caught in the traditional mindset of trying to adjust swing faults by modifying their stance or buying new golf clubs, only spent thousands of dollars that didn't help their game. But after applying the principles and practices I teach in this program, came to fully realize that it's the golf athlete that plays the game, not the club. Not only does having this specialized training give you the skills to work with some of the most commonly injured athletes and enthusiasts, it gives you access to millions of people that have the finances to afford your expertise. Regardless if you're a physician treating sports injuries, a physical therapist, chiropractor, osteopath, massage therapist, conditioning specialist, or a player that wants to optimize performance, this course teaches you key assessments and how to address common muscle imbalance syndromes, identify and activate inhibited muscles, optimize core function, and clearly shows you how to progress the player through the essential stages of flexibility, stability, strength, and power development. To pre-order your e-learning course now and receive a special $100 off first access discount, go to CzechInstitute.com/GPS online. That's CzechInstitute.com/GPS online. I know you're going to enjoy this course. It's very powerful, very holistic, and it works extremely well. What I was wondering is, what do you use prayer? I know you did a lot of Tai Chi. I taught you Tai Chi, didn't I?
Yeah, I do a lot of prayer and meditation. I have had a lot of, as you would imagine, over the years with all the injuries and accidents and trauma and stuff, and particularly head traumas. I've had a lot of those.
Yeah.
Suffered with depression and anxiety a lot throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I would say when I was, after being exposed to you and working with the real, difficult people that I ended up working with in latter stages of my career, I would say to them it's a gift or a curse, depending on how you look at it, because I think it's a gift. In my earlier life, I thought it was a curse, but in essence, it's getting these practices in play to be able to be still and kind of connect with that aspect of it is all on loan. I don't know what tomorrow holds. Ultimately, all the stress that I come across in life and have found has been me attaching to my story, because it's only a story, it's not true, of how my past was, and the story I'm creating about the future, which none of them actually are true, because my past isn't even how I remember it, because it's a story that I'm creating now through the filters of my lens at this moment in time.
Right. Most of us do that and don't realize how much we're changing, but when they do analysis of factual occurrences in people's life, first what they write in a biographical, like an autobiographical accounting, they find that there can be very significant differences.
Well, it's that whole thing. I never ever hear what you say. I hear my version of what I think you say.
Right. Yes. Thus the
which is so far from the truth.
Technique in nonviolent communication: repeat and reinforce.
Yeah.
So what I thought I just heard you say, Gary, was, and you either say yes or no, but oftentimes it's no. That's not what I said at all. And you're like, oh, really? Well, what did you say?
Isn't that where all the problems come in life? Is lack of understanding and taking the time to reflect and ask questions to make sure that you understood what I said. Because we agree, and I'm thinking you've agreed it's an orange.
Yeah.
You're thinking I'm agreed it's an apple. So we shake hands and we go off and we're happy.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, we're in a big brawl, and you go, oh, well, you said it was an orange. I go, no, I didn't. I said it was an apple. You said it was an apple too.
Yeah.
It's that whole aspect of not being able to connect. So through the meditations and stuff, probably one of the most useful things I found with pain was it's a different type of meditation and a different type of focus of, rather than focusing on your pain, I would ask myself the question, because I had extreme pain for decades.
Yes.
And so I would go, where am I not feeling pain in my body right now? And I would focus on that.
Very good.
And that is what has got me through some of the most difficult times that I had, because I had the facial reconstruction.
That's a massive amount of, that's hardcore pain. Dude.
Oh, it was huge. And because of that surgery, the initial surgery was an 8-hour surgery, which fortunately medications worked. But after that, several years later, because of the surgeries, it was so invasive, I had really bad gum receding. Well, gum receding.
Right.
So there's a procedure called pinhole gum restoration, and what they do is they drill pinholes in your gum and literally separate the gum from the teeth.
Right.
They do one upper.
I remember when you had that done.
And then they pull it down and then put collagen strips in. And the anesthetic wasn't working. So I had pretty much most of that surgery without having the benefit of any painkillers.
I remember after you did that, you told me, I think you said it was the most painful thing you'd ever been through in your life.
What I did during that time, though, which probably saved the dentist from having his head ripped off, which I almost did afterwards, because he said, "Oh, geez, you're a tough bugger. How did you know?" And it's like, what am I going to do? You've got halfway through a surgery cutting my mouth to bits.
Yes.
And he goes, "Oh, we should have knocked you out completely."
Oh, yeah, thanks.
But in those moments, it was really about focusing on like, okay, where am I not feeling pain?
Yeah.
And that's kind of was an extreme example of it. And it's interesting when you do that, how you can kind of shift and also kind of train your brain.
Yes.
Because as you well know, I mean, I work with a lot of chronic pain people for many, many years, and pain becomes the most constant in our lives.
Yes.
It becomes our best friend.
Yeah.
It's almost who we define ourselves by.
Yes.
So it's like you wake up and you're going, well, what's hurting?
Yeah.
And I found through those types of meditations, it was a way of helping to train the brain to actually not be thinking about what's hurting, thinking about what's not hurting. Yeah. And it's kind of like almost like that gratitude practice, but in a sort of a different way.
It just shows you how powerful directing our awareness is, right? The ego can only focus on one thing at a time. So if you're focusing on your pain, you're certainly not focusing on the part of your body that doesn't hurt. If you're focusing on the part of your body that doesn't hurt, it's going to bring your awareness to that, and ultimately what does hurt has to fall into the background to some degree, because we're designed for linear processes in our conscious system. Because if we get distracted when we're running from a lion or hunting, we won't eat and we might be dead. So we can process pain and emotion and proprioception and interoception and exteroception, sensory feelings on the out of the body, interoception, the feelings inside your body, and proprioception, the feeling of movement, in parallel. But we cannot focus on those things with a conscious mind in parallel, or our brain would be so overwhelmed with information. There's current research suggests about 30 billion bits of information a second flowing through the human nervous system. A typewritten page is about 1,000 bits. So you got 30 billion bits of information. So that's like an Encyclopedia Britannica coming through you every second. But the ego can only focus on, the conscious mind can only pick up 10 to 100 bits a second, almost all of which are based on the person's perceptual, conscious and unconscious perceptions of what survival is. In other words, of the 30 billion, the 10 to 100 we choose every second are based on our programming on what we think we've got to see to survive. So the thing is, you realized you had to see a part of yourself that wasn't in pain to survive. And by directing your awareness to maybe your right big toe or your ankle or your foot while someone's cutting your face apart, you were able to actually segregate your mind's focus away from the conscious realization of that much pain, and at least dampen it to the point where you wouldn't want to commit suicide.
Yeah, and I think that we talked about the gifts in pain, and that certainly is, I think, one of the real gems that often people don't necessarily uncover.
Yeah.
Is that aspect, that being able to learn that, and I sort of see how it's been, and I didn't realize I was kind of doing it in my, not just my physical life, but also in my business life in different ways of, how, and that comes down to what you were sort of talking about before, about that aspect of manifestation.
Yes.
And focus. And we see it now with all the different, research and the writings and things that people are promoting a lot more nowadays. And ultimately, that's really a lot of what it is it? You're coming down to a more of a narrower focus, and from an intention point of view, you're putting that energy into that.
That's the secret word. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. If you understand basic science and like just basic physics or basic, electricity circuits, science shows that there's nothing in the universe at its fundamental level but energy and information. And we know that we have two key polarities that drive everything in the whole electromagnetic field of life, which is, everything from light to stones, really. An atom is an electromagnetic reality. But we have these two polarities, positive and negatives. But you can't have a positive or a negative without potential, can you?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we don't know where the universe came from. They say it came from a Big Bang, but they don't know whether that was the first or the millionth or the trillionth or the uncountable number of Big Bangs, right? So they just make an assumption it was the beginning. But really, the real evidence points to the fact that it was not the beginning. But all I'm saying is a universe that begins from nothing is a negative. There's nothing there. Then it becomes a positive. You have a projection. You have rocks, stones, planets, stars. There's a positive, and it's in the background of empty space. There's the negative. But something has to be the potential to create those two possibilities. A negative has no meaning without a positive, and a positive has no meaning without a negative, and neither of them can exist without potential. So what I'm driving at that's so important is that when we're talking about manifestation, we're talking about creating a business even in a time of crisis like COVID and saying, okay, I've got to do something else, or working through tremendous pain. What people don't realize is that the word intention means to put potential into tension. And whatever is the background potential is the functional equivalent of God, because it's the source of all that is, regardless at any scale. Something has to come from something. So if you keep going backwards till you hit a dead end, whatever you want to call it, potential, a void, God, it doesn't really matter. It just means you got to the end of the line where there's nothing else you can say came from that. If you say, well, there's a devil, well, then you have to say, who created the devil? Well, who created the devil was God. Therefore, you have to say, well, God, the devil is God's creation, maybe because most people treat the devil as it's another God. And therefore, you have two gods. But then where did they come from? So you see, once you get to the reductio ad absurdum, where there's no place to go, then you have found what the word God means. And so what I'm saying is that's pure potential. Because you can't say God is the universe, because the universe had to come from something. And what I'm saying is that in an electromagnetic circuit, that's like an insulator. It's neutral. It can't be positive or negative, or current wouldn't flow. So you just have the equivalent, the analogy I often give is a battery. Until you hook something up to it, you just got potential sitting in there. But once you turn the ignition on in your car, it draws potential because you had the intention of using the power to activate the starter circuits and the electronics in the car, and therefore the engine turns on. So what I'm really driving at is that what people don't realize, and what our whole story is you and I have both learned through lots of practice and lots of challenges to focus our intention and know that we're drawing potential from potential into action. And so therefore the word intention, as I teach it, means to put potential into tension, which means to polarize it. Yeah. Because if you put it into a circuit with a positive negative differential, so the way we create a differential when we want to create something is you say, Gary says, Paul, I have this idea for this amazing online platform that'll help people all over the world develop better exercise programs and manage clients. But the idea is not embodied yet. So paradoxically, you have a negative film imprint. There's the negative. Mm-hmm. And now we have to pray and move our feet. And every step we go, we're creating the positive. And then when it's complete at a certain level, there's a sense of awe. and relaxation, then we diffuse the polarity until someone says, oh, Gary, you can make it better this way. And now we have another dream, goal, or objective, which creates another negative. But if you take your intention off growing PtEnhance, or if I take it off Check Institute and say, oh, I'm going to run around fool with women and be a jet setter, well, then you've taken the energy out of your dream and it begins to diminish because it's lost the flow of your spirit.
Yeah.
Intention is what conducts spirit into manifestation. So, both of us have learned the hard way in many instances. Don't get distracted. Stay connected to your heart. Don't let the challenges scare you. And, you know very well, like I spent a lot of time, energy, and money, worked with a lot of people, and went through a lot of challenges while you were going through yours to get the Czech Institute to be digitally functional. And so when COVID hit, paradoxically, people are freaking out and losing jobs and losing money all around. But we had our third best month of sales in the history of the Institute. I think in a very short period of time, we sold, almost 200 HLC1s online. And it cost us a lot of money, went through a lot of hassles. And we used to hardly get any activity when we spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I imagine we probably spent $200,000 building online platforms. And we used to pay high rent to Idea. And we weren't getting very much action. But we all sort of prophesized this was going to be a necessary thing.
Yeah.
And so when COVID hit, it was almost as though the universe said, thank you for listening. And here's your reward.
Yeah, like totally. Our story's very similar with that, Paul. And as we've sort of talked about before, I've always thought the fitness industry model was a flawed model, or a model that was very vulnerable for this type of stuff. That was part of, in essence, where the software aspect came. That not that everything has to be online, but having different verticals in your business. And even when I had my training business and my clinic back in Australia, I was a golf biomechanic and I did massage therapy and I did a few different things. And I would always look at it as have different streams coming into my business or the business, because that's something I've learned the hard way, which I'll mention in a moment. But having different streams come in, because they're all not going to be overflowing at once, and they're all not going to be dry at once.
Right.
Not that you try and do everything, but it's recognizing it. And I think I have different business coaches and stuff that I've worked with over the years, and been fortunate to get some really cool spiritual guys that I'm working with. But one of the was reflected back to me. I said, what you've done so much is mitigate risk. So you're looking, and that's, I think, as a business owner, there's a two-pronged approach of thriving and expanding as much as possible, not being overly pessimistic, but also just kind of having that reality of mitigating risk. Well, okay, if X happens, you've got a plan B.
Yes.
I've kind of learnt that probably the hard way from having no plan B a lot of the time. You don't focus on plan B, but it's that aspect of looking at that. And the other thing I think you were saying, how do you get through it? And for me, what it is also, it's surrendering and detaching to not just the process, not just the outcome.
Yes.
Because that used to beat me up a lot, and it still does at times when I get caught up in it. Because if I think what the outcome I wanted, that ego talking now,
yes,
back in 2006,
yes,
as to where we are now and where we're going, it's nothing like that.
Yes.
And so it's being open and letting go of the that outcome. But what I also have found over the years is that the ego can be quite seductive in letting you let go of the outcome,
right,
but heavily attaching to the process. And you've got to let go to it, attaching to the outcome or the process, and be mindful and be open. But like as you say, it's not that you don't do anything. I really love that analogy of pray and move your feet.
Yes.
Because it's not about not doing anything, but it's listening and being mindful and seeing what comes through.
Yeah.
And just the persistence as well.
Yeah.
Because, geez, how many amazing people have we had in the history of humanity that show us you don't hit it out of the park first time at the bat.
No. And even if you do, it might be 5 years before you do it again.
Exactly.
So your ego might get a little overinflated.
So it's, for me, it's constantly remembering and reminding myself of, okay, well, we found out another way of how not to do it.
Right.
And
That's one of the things that's kept me going, that's right in line with that is, I studied the biographies of about 125 of the world's greatest thinkers at this point. And I really learned early in my life, if you want to be successful, you have to study successful people. If you want to get strong, you got to study strong people. Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying Gary Crozier's story of going from being completely broken and broke to becoming a Czech practitioner and ultimately an International Personal Trainer of the Year winner. When I was Gary's therapist, one of the issues we worked on was improving his digestion, and that commonly requires the use of effective digestive enzymes to support the body with optimal nutrient availability. Today, my first choice for enzyme solutions to healing, optimizing digestion, helping my clients and my body recover from exercise more efficiently are Bioptimizer's excellent products. Bioptimizer's products are at the cutting edge of health science and ideal for supporting your digestion, metabolism, assimilation, and elimination. That means you get more from your food, your supplements, you heal faster, and perform better. Bioptimizer's enzymes also aid recovery from training, and their Capex enzymes help stimulate your metabolism naturally and are very, very helpful for people with metabolic syndrome. Living 4D listeners save 10% on any order by using the code PAUL10. That's capital P, lowercase AUL 10 on checkout. Go to bioptimizers.com and check out their amazing product line. And remember, to get your 10% discount off all purchases, use the code capital P, lowercase AUL 10 on checkout. Listen to my episode number 55, Wade Lightheart. You'll meet the co-founder of Bioptimizers, and you'll find a lot of wisdom in this guy, and you'll learn all about the science of enzymes and many of the great Bioptimizers products. Enjoy Bioptimizers products, and as always, I'd love to hear your feedback. And as a side note, one of the things that I noticed about the medical system working in it for so many years is having taken thousands of hours of training and advanced training with doctors and therapists of all types. And I've posted this question to them before. I say, here's a question I have for you. Why is it that everything you're presenting to me here is research based on sick, broken people? How is it that you study sick people to figure out how to get them healthy when you should be studying healthy people so you know what you're trying to create? Because ultimately, it's like not having a dream, goal, or objective. And so what the objective becomes is just to get rid of people's pain, but they don't learn anything about how they created it, and they don't know what it takes to make health. Yeah. So really what I did, seeing that all the way back probably in my 20s, actually in my early 20s, was going, I was raised on a farm. You don't function this way. My father knew what a healthy animal was. And whenever an animal wasn't healthy, his first question is, what is going on with this animal that's stopping it from being healthy, and how do I get it healthy again? Not just how do you get it to stop limping, or how do you get the barbed wire out of its stomach, or whatever is going on, or, get the parasites out of its body. If there's parasites in an animal's body, it means there's something going on in the soil or the environment that needs to be addressed, or the cow's got some kind of, stress problem and it's not digesting well. But there's always, even in farming, there's an awareness of what you're trying to do with the animals and the crops. But when I got into medicine, there was no model for that. They kept focusing on what was wrong, and they had no pathway to get people back. That's why I said, how can you do orthopedic rehabilitation without looking at people's diet, without looking at their lifestyle, and without looking at their relationships? Nobody leaves their divorce, their bank accounts, their children, their stress at the front door of the gym or on the rugby pitch or whatever, or the tennis court. And people looked at me like I was nuts. Like, we don't have time to do that. Well, look, this person's been here for 163 visits of physical therapy with SI joint pain, and I rehabbed them in 6 visits. You want to know why? I asked them, what are they doing that's causing the pain? Now, a lot of physical therapists ask that, but they shy away from the deeper questions like, are you happy in your relationship? Or do you like your job?
Yeah.
So without going on a deep tour of psychology, the point is that most people don't hold the focus of what they really want. They focus on what they don't want, but don't look at how they keep recreating it, which is why I love Arnold Patton's universal principles. And in one of them, he says, if you don't like what's happening in your life, look carefully at what you're creating unconsciously.
It's the questions, what questions we're constantly asking ourselves. And to me, it's like how to ask better questions, and how to look at myself in a different way. And it's interesting. It seems, and it's that common. It feels like common sense to me, Paul. I don't know about you, but
it does to me. Yes,
it seems like.
But I was raised by parents with common sense.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe I was too.
Yeah.
In this day and age, and the way the education systems and different things seem to be pushing and moving, it's not about questioning, about asking the right questions, and it's about, particularly when you're looking at for-profit based health and whatnot, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but the focus seems to shift purely and solely onto money.
Yes.
Which is, a very poor focus.
Yes.
In regards to getting someone healthy or being successful in life. Or even right now, there's so many people out of work, and there's so many people, freaked out and behaving the ways they normally wouldn't behave. I live in an apartment complex down in the village, just 2 blocks from the beach, and 2 weekends ago, the downstairs neighbours, they were having a massive screaming match, and the guy threw all his girlfriend's stuff out onto the footpath and was screaming like, you don't pay rent in here and blah, blah, blah. Now, they're really decent people. They're not bad people.
Right.
I guess they are all out of work. They're in a small apartment. They're in a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
So the thoughts that they have are being magnified in that situation.
Yes.
And that's the outcome. Yeah. And it's not meant as a judgment or a criticism, but just more an observation of, when I see that, I ask myself, well, where am I doing those sorts of things in my life?
Yes.
And how is that blocking me?
Yeah.
Because it's the questions that I ask myself, and ultimately that filter that I'm seeing the world through, that whole thing of, when I used to do the rehab with clients, the difficult pain clients would come in, and I would get them to sit down and look around the room, and I would say to them, look, I want you to look around the room and see everything that's black as hard as you can and quickly, because in a moment I'm going to get you to shut your eyes and ask you something. I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
So, okay, look around, keep looking around, right? And okay, now shut your eyes. And I would say to them, now I want you to tell me everything in my room or in this clinic here that's pink.
Right.
And they go, oh, you're trying to trick me. And it was no, I'm not trying to trick you. And I would leave pink and yellow and different things around the clinic. And I was just say it's really more through what I went through myself as well, to show that reality is not reality. It's purely the filter or the lens that we're looking through the mind.
Yeah.
So if I've got a black filter on my eyes, all I see is black. But look at that beautiful pink over there and that nice fuchsia. And I think that's has been one of the challenges and one of the traps. But paradoxically, with what's going on now, I think it's also, I'm kind of excited because it's putting all that shit, for want of a better word, in our faces to show us what we're thinking. And we're seeing it with the practitioners, different people we're working with. So a lot of guys and girls are coming to us and saying, hey, how do we do this?
Right.
We recognize there's got to be a different way.
Right.
And, that's that point of being able to be open and ask a question and look at, my future can be different.
Yes. And I think also trusting. You see, one of the reasons that having some kind of spiritual practice and having 4 doctors in your life is those 4 doctors, as you know, meet the foundation needs of a healthy body. So if a person doesn't do things that are happy making, doesn't move their body, doesn't eat for their body's needs, and doesn't get enough rest, the body's always in a state of stress, which produces biological fear. So that fear bubbles up into their conscious mind. They don't know why they're anxious or why they're nervous or scared, but they don't realize it's because their body's anxious, nervous, or scared, just like your dog would be if you forgot to water it or feed it for a few days. It would be scratching at the walls and acting like a crazy animal. And so, people would take it to a psychiatrist and give it a pill and not feed it in our culture.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, if in one of my heroes, David Bohm, quantum physicist David Bohm, he says no man can do effective thinking without a healthy ritual to ground him. You have to get past the survival basics. And the point I'm making is when you can put the basics into practice so that they become natural ways of living to you, then what happens is it creates a baseline level of relaxation that allows your mind to actually open. It's like opening the sunroof in your car on a sunny day. Instead of feeling all confined and stuffy, you now have the whole sky above you and the sun shining through. And that's how intuition arrives. But whenever you're focused on fear, what you don't want, or how bad things are, or how much money you don't have, you're not only keeping the sunroof closed, you're farting in the car and keeping the windows closed and calling that a normal day. And so if we keep ourselves so that we say, what would I love to do now? And as you know, you did my PPS lessons. I created those PPS Success Mastery lessons because they're the 12 most common things I saw stopping people from healing and accomplishing their dreams, goals, and objectives as athletes, as business people, as everybody.
Well, I still use that today, and that's part of what sometimes I sort of think from a point of view of curiosity, not from an egotistical point of view, like, wow, how am I managing all this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, seems pretty crazy, with everything that's going on. Without those rituals, I wouldn't be able to. I live 2 blocks from the beach because the ocean is part of what I have to have. I know whenever I'm away from the ocean, my health is not as good. I get up every morning and I go for a walk along the beach. I meditate. I do some qigong. Now that the water is warmer, because I gotten real soft coming out and living in Southern California.
Yeah.
So I go out and body surf, and at particular times of the day, I'll stop and I'll get out midday and get some sunshine on me.
Yes.
If I don't, and during COVID with the lockdown, I started to get a bit feral because we had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
We had a whole big launch for the rebuild of the platform from scratch, and we did some stuff for trainers for that, and we were also at the same time upgrading our current platform, etc. And it's very easy because I work from home. I usually go out to cafes or restaurants to eat, to work if they got Wi-Fi, and socialize in the gym. And it's amazing how, even with all they do and I've done, how seductive the computer is.
Right.
And before I know it, I'm in there all day, or I haven't left the house for a couple of days.
Right.
And I would really feel it. I was getting pretty feral.
Yeah.
I even started cutting my own hair, which I don't have a lot of, but it's being able to keep those rhythms going.
Yeah.
And so now, it was a reminder. And look, I didn't really let much slip, but it was a reminder to see, wow, it's interesting to see the impact that has. And one of the challenges I had to overcome, I think partly from Western culture and also, religions as well,
Yes.
that martyrdom of, well, actually, no, it's okay. Like, I have the routine of how I work, and I work when I work.
Yes.
I don't work regular hours.
No.
I when I'm at the gym, people are like, dude, what do you do? And it's like, you never work or whatever. Actually, I work quite hard.
Yeah.
But it was learning to separate.
Give yourself what you need.
Yeah.
About that concept.
Exactly. And that's, what you're saying is amazing. And that's that first step is choosing, because I like that concept or that statement of I choose to, rather I want to, I need to, I must.
Or I have
You never
to.
do it. I have to. I choose to. It's actually happening now in the present, and I'm actually making that choice.
Yeah. Marshall Rosenberg says, I have to are the words of a child. I choose to are the words of an adult.
Yeah.
And the point that I wanted to throw in there is that, in a situation, and you and I have both been through many, COVID's really just a sort of a social enactment of the kind of crisis we've been through, with losing financial supporters, losing staff. Remember 2008.
Yeah, that was
almost killed me in the Institute. I get $700,000 in debt. I was like, I'd already been through a bankruptcy. There was no way of that. And not that I would ever want to do that. But the point is, I only had one choice: figure it out. Me and Penny had to figure it out. And we did. And within a year and a half, we were in the green again. And many, many, many businesses went out.
Well, yeah, we went from, there were crazy times. We went from, the subscription used to be annual contracts.
Right.
We went from annual contracts. We also went from charging in Australian dollars to US dollars because our business was growing so much. And that was the time when the US dollar tanked.
Right.
So I can totally relate, because going from a sale being, $1,100, $1,200 a sale to $100 a sale.
Wow.
Because you're going from annuals to monthlies.
Yeah.
I totally can appreciate that. And it's that thing is that you figure it out.
Yes.
But if a lot of that comes from thoughts, though. If I've got thoughts that are inhibiting me from doing that, and also thoughts that are disconnecting me from who I really am,
right,
and from God inside and the forces that are coming through me,
yes,
it makes it really challenging. Because how do I get out of my own way when I don't know that I'm in my own way? Because I'm that thing again. I'm thinking I'm the pilot of the plane, as opposed to being the plane.
Right.
And that's, I think, one of the challenges for people. But even just asking that question, because I always, you think, well, how do I do it? Well, isn't just asking the question that starts. The moment you ask the question, you step from being blended with the experience to the observer.
Yes, you go from being entangled to observing.
And you're witnessing, and that witnessing, it's interesting because I often working with a lot of clients. I work with chronic pain people, and they all had depression or anxiety. So I did a lot of studies in psychology and different things, and we had a great psychologist because I had a multidisciplinary group, that I work with, kind of like you did yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being able to get in and actually separate from those thoughts that are going on, and actually in those moments asking yourself a question and recognizing that thought it's driving my vision of what I'm seeing,
Mm-hmm.
but what I'm seeing isn't real.
Right.
So being able to stop and go, okay, even from an anxiety point of view, what have I been? What am I thinking that's making me anxious, or even what can I think of that might feel good or might feel comfortable, or
is it really true?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Because as I shared with Laird Hamilton, and him and I did an incredible 3-hour podcast yesterday, and we talked a lot about fear, because as you can imagine, surfing a 110-foot wave can bring up some fear out of you.
Scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, I mean that's like 11 stories. So
yeah.
If Laird's not careful, those things can hold you under for 3.5-4 minutes, because you're pushed down by the massive amount of water. So
it's tons, isn't it?
He gets hurt down there. He'll be dead. But we were talking a lot about fear, and so I tell people, look at all the times in your life that you were scared to death and you acted irrationally. You ended relationships, got out of business deals, and it turned out not to be what you thought it was, or you thought your partner was cheating on you, and you got all wound up and freaked out and started spying on them and found out you were wrong or whatever. So the thing is that we and I quote Zig Ziglar, who says fear is often false evidence appearing real, but that goes back to our programming and how our parents lived and how our culture functions. And so if we don't, as Jung says, the average man can never be successful, because by definition, you're average. So if you really want to be successful at everything, you got to stop acting like an average person and stop thinking like one, and have more trust and more faith and more commitment to yourself and to the process. The key I was driving at earlier is that the one thing that has kept me going, and I think you too, is that I do what I do because it's what makes me feel like I'm sharing love and getting love. And I feel that if I stick to doing what I love to do, that I get to go to work every day, and it doesn't feel like a labor that's unsustainable. It's kind of like when a woman gives birth. Yes, it's going to be painful, and there can be great risks to it. Most people would never take that kind of pain unless they had a tremendous love for the child.
Yeah.
And so when a person's going through a crisis and they're having to reinvent themselves, PPS Success Mastery Lesson 1 shows you the 10 components of a dream or a legacy. And there's key things you really have to say, well, what would I love to do right now? If I could do whatever I wanted to do. If you wanted to make quilts, then quit telling yourself you can't make quilts. Start making quilts. If you want to be a painter, start painting. If you want to, whatever, build. The question is not whether you can or can't do it. The question is, what do you love enough to do to really put your heart and soul in it? Because then your spirit's invested in it. And then you become magnetic, and as we both discussed, you start drawing people to you, and all of a sudden angels show up, and it seems like miracles, and one day you realize the whole universe was conspiring. They was just waiting for you to stop playing poor me.
Yeah, get out of your own way.
Yeah. And so, there's real questions to ask. What do I love to do? Where do I want to be? How much money do I want to make? How much responsibility am I genuinely willing to accept for the amount of money that I want to make? A lot of people want lots of money but no responsibility, but I got news for you. Those two don't work without each other. Where there's lots of money, there's lots of responsibility.
And on a number of levels, I think perhaps people don't necessarily consciously appreciate till they get there as well.
Right. What kind of people do I want to work with? What kind of environment do I want my work environment to be? Do I want to be controlled by some boss somewhere? Do I want to be in an environment that's got chemicals in it? Do I want to have an environment that allows me time to exercise? Most people don't really think about what it is that really would love to do because they're too conditioned to do what they think they have to do to make money, which
get it
usually
done.
came by way of their parents' influence or some school teacher telling you, oh, you'll never make it as a musician or you'll never make it as an athlete. And so I think if people really look, it's far more fun to recreate yourself than it is to commit suicide or become a victim, right?
In my books, yeah, and I honestly can say I came very close to committing suicide a couple of times in my life.
Well, you
Very
had
close,
reason to. I mean, I remember how bad you were.
But there's that thing as you talk about that gift, and there's even in those darkest times, there were angels that were sent to me, and that were created enough space to just have that separation.
Hi, everybody. I'm not sure how familiar you are with minerals and trace minerals, but minerals are important to our body for many, many functions, and minerals and trace minerals also help regulate our hormonal system. And one of the products that I've been using for many years is Shilajit minerals. But when I got a hold of Chervine's Shilajit from Symbiotica, it was a total notch above anything I've ever tried. So I've got Chervine here to tell us what's special about his Shilajit and how to use it.
Shilajit is, you can pronounce it any way you want. I like Shilajit. It makes me want to dance a little bit, because the actual product makes me want to dance.
Good.
I take it on the rise. It's at the center point of Ayurveda. It's a collection of fulvic minerals, soil, decomposition of plant material. So you're getting all the minerals, and you're getting it the way Mother Earth provided it and the way we can absorb it. And so the way I look at that, it's instant energy, and it reduces acidosis across the body. So if you want to reduce and chelate acids out of the body, Shilajit is pretty much the answer and the solution to that. And, it's probably our best seller right now. Everybody's, doing rituals with it on the rise, and they're using it throughout the day. It makes for a really good, tonic. It's delicious. Once your body starts getting acclimated to it, the flavor starts to kick in. And, if you're a coffee drinker, if you're a matcha drinker, if you're a tea drinker, this is a really good balancer to keep your body nourished of what you need, because most people drinking coffee, they're pouring acids and onto an already acidic body. This is a good way to balance that out through the minerals.
And if you're not eating certified organic food from good soils, you're eating mineral deficient food. And the minerals in Shilajit are very important for our skin, our nails, and our hair, which a lot of people have problems with. So I think this is a great product across the board for anybody.
And our jing, right? So we are mineral deficient. Our foods have been dilapidated, right? It's like frankenfoods, right? Shilajit is mineralizing you to the blood, to the bone. And if you're a man, you're really going to feel it, let me tell you.
Yeah, well, good. I'm sure the women will like that. So get your jing with your Shilajit. And jing, that means your juice, your life force, boys. And the nice thing about Shilajit is it does not take much at all. No. A serving is tiny. It's very potent stuff. So it's not like you have to use a lot. It'll last you for quite a while. So go to Symbiotica, Symbiotika.com. And on checkout, to get your 15% discount, use the code CHECK15 in all caps, capital C, capital H, capital E, capital K, 15. And remember, check out all their other products because your discount works right across the board. Enjoy. Well, you were an angel to me too, because you said to me, you sat me down in your investor's place in Sydney, I remember, and you said, Paul, I want to show you something. If you'll get behind this with me, I'm going to help you create some residual income that'll create stability for you. You helped me with your intellectual property and letting people know about the system and help me grow it. And let me show you the numbers. And you showed me, look, if we can grow this thing by looking at numbers of, and people taking memberships and how much it would produce at a certain scale, and look what it's done.
And that was, for me, it's always been, and I think we share a very similar belief there, and how we were attracted or were brought to each other. For me, no matter what I went through, I always felt that there was some greater good for it, and it was to help someone. And I would often not know what I'd be doing next as a career or where things were moving, but I would get a feeling of a sense of change. But it'd always be about helping and supporting and whatnot. And so the business, when it started, it was to help you, to have an income for you, help the Institute.
Also, I love that. Thank you.
Help, the practitioners in the Institute. Obviously, it's such detailed information. And I would go to a course and I would come away with a folder full of notes. Half of them I couldn't read. The other half would have challenges understanding because I'm not a great writer. And it was about helping practitioners have a better learning experience and have tools to continue to develop and evolve, and then pass that on to the client as well, to have a better life, to have systems and be able to automate marketing and do all sorts of different things in their businesses, so they use that time whatever they want to do, whether it's grow their business or go out and play with their kid, and help all the way through, even the investors in the company. And when the staff come on and when they talk to them, and I say to them, like, I'm really looking forward to seeing who you become, because for this to go where it's going to go, and it's a beast, it's not mine, it's not my business. That was the thing that beat me up the most, and that's probably what saved me, was when I learned to say the business rather than my business.
Right.
Because when I was saying my business, it owned my ass.
Right,
and it
yes.
beat the hell out of me.
Yeah, I've been through that.
When I would come, and now I say the business because it's a living entity.
It is a living,
energy,
breathing being.
and it's going to go where it's going to go. Right now, I've got the privilege of being the steward of the ship, but that may not carry on. And I would say to my staff, or the staff, there's my ego coming in again,
Right.
say to the staff, look, I'm really looking forward to see who you become. And also, because it's about your journey as well. So what we can do to support you. And if at a certain point in time, your journey is going to go in a different direction, let's agree on how you're going to sack my ass, or how we're going to sack each other in that moment in time. Because the goal is that for our lives is to where we're going to move. So at a point in the business's journey may not be the right direction for you and your journey.
Right.
And I'm going to support that and encourage it. So let's agree on, before we even start working with each other, on how we're going to do that. And it's been amazing to see just how this beast and where it goes, and the crazy things that happen. Like, I couldn't have made any of this happen if I was trying.
Right.
And that's probably...
Well, I couldn't have made the technology happen, even though you didn't come into this with technology as a skill set. You took it on, just like I had to take on the whole concept of learning how human beings work and what to do with them.
Huge.
And that was a big undertaking, and it still is. I mean, I still study every day pretty much and practice, and that's the thing. When you're doing what you love to do,
But it's fun.
the growth is a natural process. When you're not doing what you love to do, all you can think about is how quickly you can get out of work to go start living, or you have to medicate yourself to get into an alternate reality. You need to get stoned, or you need to get drunk or something to shift out of this mundane reality, and that's what drives a hell of a lot of addictions. But when my point that I was getting at is that you came to me with a tremendous set of problems, and I had done the work to become the person that would inspire you to become the person that you were next to become, which is a highly skilled Czech professional, which gave you the chances to see how the intellectual property that I developed could be made more available and help people with management designing programs, which allows them to do more of what they love to do and automates and makes easier the parts of the job that they usually don't do well but can cripple their business and help them grow the business. So the paradox of it is that we both angeled each other. I supported you to get healthy and develop a career that led to your awareness of what you could do, which then supported me with residual income that got me through a lot of hard times. There's been a couple of times where we were both broke. I'm like, Gary, can I have a pay? You gonna pay me this month? I'm sorry, Paul, I'm broke too. I'm like, all right.
It's true though, isn't it? And it's interesting to see just being able to. What I hear through all this is the fun, and it is fun. I still enjoy what I'm doing.
Me too. Yeah.
After 13, I knew nothing about software. I was passionate about strength training and weightlifting. I used to weigh 260 pounds and did all sorts of crazy stuff and enjoyed all that and was passionate about it. And I love it. And that's why I do what I do, because you've been in the industry a lot longer than me. I've been about 20 something years now with practicing and software. It's what an amazing industry to be in, the health and the fitness industry, and get up and be able to help people every day. And
that's the secret, isn't it? I mean, think about it. When do you feel the most love?
When I'm helping people.
When you're helping somebody, right?
Yeah.
Because what's the truth of us? The truth of us is that we're not separate. The truth of us is that we're really all the same that created the world and the universe, because ultimately our consciousness comes from that which is a priori to our body. In other words, if it's obvious looking out the window that it takes creative intelligence not only to create a universe, but to keep it from just colliding into itself.
Yeah.
So we can say there has to be consciousness involved, or there wouldn't be harmony and there wouldn't be obvious design, right? Look at your human body.
Yep.
I mean, how do you even begin to fathom the level of technology it would take to create a living biological organism that can reproduce itself, make love, solve problems, fly to the moon, build advanced technology, when the closest thing to us is a chimpanzee that's still in a cage eating peanuts and swinging from rafters, without getting into all the ways that might have happened. But when you look at, like, okay, how does something like this happen? How does the universe happen? Well, obviously, there's an exquisite level of consciousness and creativity that's innate to us because it created us. So if you look around you at the majesty and the mystery and the beauty of life and of nature, you can give yourself a pat on the back and say, I am that. So maybe my problems aren't that bad, because look, Mother Earth has been blasted to shit with nuclear bombs, with asteroid strikes, with solar flares. I mean, the history of this planet is one of some serious ass kickings, and she's not complaining. So at the end of the day, if we say, wait a minute, I am that, and I am that tough, and I am that capable, and when, I know you know this too, you get to the point where you realize, like, here I am in my dream home on my dream property.
Amazing. Yeah.
I'm, almost 60 years old now. I worked my ass off for, my whole career, which has been 36 years now. And I look back at it and I couldn't be nearly as in awe, respect, and grace and gratitude as I am if I hadn't have been through the times when I was broke, didn't know what the hell I was going to do, had to work my ass off, had to fly back and forth to Australia in cattle car seats, feeling like shit because my body was killing me, and eating crap and having my food taken away and fighting with flight attendants and, whatever. And so when you really get into the river of life and say, I'm going to swim this thing, and if it gets too intense for me, then I'm just going to have to trust Great Spirit to pull me through the rapids. And you stick with what you love to do, and be fair to people, be honest with people, and be someone worth being around instead of a royal pain in the ass, then you see the angels come, and you see the synchronicities happen, and the kind of the strange and weird thing is, we wouldn't be sitting here having the conversation that is the basis of what's now helping. How many people are using PtEnhance?
We've had thousands on it, and we've probably got about, with trainers and clients, tens of thousands on now.
Yeah. So, thousands and thousands of people wouldn't have that opportunity if it wasn't for the fact that you took it upon yourself to heal your pain, even when you got told it was all in your head and nobody was able to help you. And I wouldn't have been able to help you if I didn't all of a sudden realize I feel most happy when I'm helping people. And for some reason, God gave me a gift. And the gift is, I seem to be able to see what most smart people can't see, because, like you, I've got a 9th grade education. I was raised on a farm, and I had to pay attention to the things you had to pay attention to, or you starved to death, you killed your animals, you lost your plants. And, when you have those kind of pressures on you, you don't have time to be educated in things that don't work, or that are just making rich people richer, or reading textbooks that are way outdated. You'll die doing that.
And I always say to people, well, not always, but often is, and that was one of the things that for some reason used to go through my head a lot of when I was younger and going through the stuff I was going through, was that I don't know where am I going to be in 10 years?
Yeah.
Because I think, 13 years ago when I started this, no one was doing this in the world. We were the first people in the world doing this stuff.
Right.
And I remember, people saying that you had rocks in your head and blah, blah, blah. And I go now thinking of what I see as challenges and stresses and worries now. And it's like, dude, why are you worrying? Because who knows where you're going to be in another 10 years?
Right.
You have no idea.
No.
Trusting source, and trusting that all of us have within us that source which allows us to be capable to meet our needs no matter what we need to be doing.
Yes.
So who knows what I'll be doing, and also being open to change. I think, that whole aspect of people would say, oh, the weak will inherit the world, or the meek, sorry, will inherit the world,
inherit the world,
or the strong. To me, it's never been that. It's the person that's most adaptable to change, because the only constant in life is change.
Yeah.
And I've gone through a whole phase of it again over the last year or two myself. I'm into my 50s now, and at different times I've been so comfortable with change, and you go through all these different periods, and have different challenges in life, and different things that come in front of you, which is another opportunity to either heal that part or see that part of whatever, the ego is there, and re-engage with being open to the possibility of change. Because that aspect of my ego tends to want security, and security is what I knew.
The ego's totally interested in what it thinks it can control.
Yeah, and if
any risk, and there's the process, right? Our culture is so brainwashed into thinking, oh, if I just invest this much money, in 6 months I'll have this, in 3 years I'll have this. Well, the stock market crash really, when the 2008 stock market crashed, the day after it crashed, I got calls from 4 Czech practitioners in different countries, and all of them had clients that committed suicide because they lost so much money in the stock market. Yeah. So the point is you see their model of reality, which came from a Western academic, or you could call it a Western academic institution, is if you put this much in, you'll get this much out. And I kept telling people, you're missing a key thing in the middle: input, process, output. And then I quote Hegel: first you have a thesis, an idea. Then you have to go through the antithesis, which is all the things that are in the way of the idea, such as, does my widget work? Do I have enough supplies? Will my suppliers, is the materials going to stand up to the test? Well, is it safe for people to use? That's the process, right? That's the R&D part that people keep forgetting about. But that's where our real growth and development comes. That's what brings us into contact with intelligent people that have answers to questions we don't, that builds relationships that lead to more relationships. And so, even if you're scared, broken, alone, if you're someone that's loving and honest and supportive to the best you can be, you always will find people that will support you. You and I both know that for sure.
Yeah.
But if you just turn into a sad sack, pain in the ass, poor me, crybaby, nobody wants you around, because everybody's already got enough problems with children in the world.
And it's a very unattractive energy, and it
repels,
repels,
Yeah, it's the victim, right?
Yeah.
So, my point is, if you're out there right now in this whole pandemic and it seems like you've hit the bottom, just do what you can do that you love to do, and go be with people that have answers to the questions. And if you like to rub feet, rub feet. If you want to mow lawns, mow lawns. I mean, I remember when I was a soldier in the military, we were so damn broke because, on a private salary, I had my wife and kid, and I had to live off post, and I didn't have enough rank to get any money to live off post. You were supposed to live on post, but because I was married, they let me live off post. And so we were broke usually about 3 days or 4 days before every paycheck. And we just realized we have to go mow lawns or do something. So we just saved up a few pennies, talked to some of the soldiers that I knew, borrowed a lawnmower, borrowed a rake and a couple of shovels, and we started going out and cleaning yards and landscaping on the weekend, just so we had enough money to put gas in the cars and go to a movie once in a while and feel like we could live. I remember when Paul Jr. was a little boy, he was out cleaning yards with us, and it was just to keep us alive, right?
And you do what you got to do.
You do. And the thing is, it brought us into a deep sense of connection with each other, because we were working to support and love each other. Yeah. So the point I'm making is, if a person just falls into the crisis, says poor me, and then drinks and drugs themselves into numbness, then you need only go to the bathroom and look in the mirror to find the real problem.
Yeah.
But if you say, okay, challenge equals opportunity, now's my chance to deepen my faith. Now's my chance to really ask, is it true?
Yeah, and starts with that first question.
Yes.
Yeah, because through what I've been through, I've been some very, very, very dark holes where I couldn't see a light. And just asking the question, well, could there be a light?
Yeah.
Was enough to create a little bit of a spark. And as you, I think, so wisely say there, is this true, is a huge question. Yeah. And the other one I love from Byron Katie is what if the opposite's true?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
could the opposite be true?
Yeah.
So that's a nice way I've found to soften my attachment to a particular thing my ego's hanging on to, is by asking the question, well, this is terrible. Well, could the opposite be true? Well, actually, the opposite could be true.
Yeah.
And so then that just starts to open and stops that blending, because what I've seen with people that are in the darkest places, it's hard to separate from the thought.
Yeah.
From a young age, I've sort of always questioned my thoughts. And when I was in my early 20s, I moved to Canada, and I was in charge of construction, renovating high-rise apartment buildings. And a buddy of mine who I met in the gym was a philosopher, and he wrote books and stuff. And one of his books had a quote in it. And the quote was, "Everything I think I know could be wrong."
Yeah.
And it wasn't to not have any beliefs, but to me it meant question my beliefs, hold them onto loosely enough that I can meet you or someone else, and you can challenge my beliefs, which can help and shift and shape and change.
Yes.
So I always sort of, from in my early 20s, thought, don't believe all my thoughts, and I'm not who I think I am.
Right.
So it's in turn being able to get that separation from being completely blended, because if I don't, now every thought I have is who I am and my reality.
Yeah, the person that believes their thoughts, the name for that is the encapsulated ego. In other words, you don't get outside your own illusions of yourself, which include your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Low self-esteem. That's a person who's believing their thoughts, not looking into their potentials, and not willing to say, well, I made it this far. What have I learned, and how can I use that to create something more beautiful? And, there's an old saying, my dad used to say this: fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So Osho says there's no such thing as a sin except doing something twice when you were sure it didn't work the first time. Point being is, if we've lived certain ways and we have certain belief patterns and thinking patterns, or even religions or isms, like look at all the people that screw themselves up with their isms of diet, then we can look at ourselves and say, okay, wait a minute. Is this really working for me? And what's a bigger question? And where can I go from here? What have I learned? Who knows more than me? I mean, there's so many options, and all those options ultimately create new relationships.
And it's that letting go, that aspect, because that analogy of, there's a lot of anger often attached to those feelings and emotions. And I had a lot of anger. I've had 16 major surgeries, including a full facial reconstruction, a spinal fusion. It's cost me over $250,000.
Yeah.
That's a shitload of money.
Yes,
and parts of me, I've had to work through anger around that, because it was like, why me, blah, blah, blah. And I can see how people get caught in that. But when you get stuck there, that anger is, I think, is a positive emotion, because anger is energy, and it prompts change.
Sure,
and
it does. Yeah.
Prompts but if we hold on to that anger, it becomes resentment.
Yeah.
And resentment's like swallowing poison and expecting your enemy to die.
Yeah.
And I think there's that vicious sort of circle, and it begins with a simple question, and I would, with clients, or even myself at times in the most stressful situations, I had a meditation I was introduced to, which was what are my feet doing now meditation.
Yeah.
Like, life's so shitty, let me just figure out, what are my feet doing now? And it just pulls me out of my head, brings me down. Okay, I can feel my feet in my jandals, which you call flip-flops, and Australians call thongs, funny enough. And it just kind of brings me back to that presence. And all of us, I can be quite right and also quite left brain, so I can get stuck in my head. And when I've been in my deepest, darkest depressions, was I've had a lot of them over the years, and have been quite close to suicide, a couple more than once.
Yeah.
It was part of what was got me through that aspect was that just take a breath, and wow, could it possibly get better?
Yes.
And no, that answer can never be no, because the future is not written.
Right.
And it's unknown. So how can I answer that question as no, honestly?
Yeah. Yeah. You can't, unless you're in a victim archetype, or you're just conditioned that way. And if you're conditioned that way, pain will get great enough. They say a broken heart allows your love to pour out. So some of us are so encapsulated and crystallized in our ways of being that we need to get broken to let our juices flow again. And so, for those of you listening, pain is actually a very important part of our conscious awakening. But having to have the same pain twice is really up to you.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be who I am without pain. And, I can honestly say the majority of the time through all those years, I was, in a space of believing that it was for a greater purpose and seeing and looking for the gifts in it. At times, some of the dark times, maybe not so much, but I wouldn't have the level of empathy and the level of compassion, and I wouldn't be as an authentic and as a vulnerable person as I am, because that pain, it strips you.
Oh, yeah.
It strips you of the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And, we still have that conditioning to some degrees and whatnot, but it stripped a lot of that away from me, because when you've got everything taken away from you, not just financially, but physically,
Yeah.
and also mentally and emotionally,
Yeah,
because
you're drained.
I was a byproduct of the traditional health medical system by the time I came to you.
Yeah.
At that age, I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
So it had really, screwed with my thoughts and my head and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
But until you're broken, how can you ever fix? And as that process of it's education and learning and growth to be able to fix myself. And,
Yeah.
I read somewhere, which I thought was kind of cool. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was something like that. God does not want us to be comfortable. He wants us to grow, or he, she, it, whatever you want to call it, wants us to grow.
Yeah.
And it's for our growth. So
Yeah.
if we look at all these different things that are happening to us in life, sure, there's a lot of pain, but man, how much have I grown through it, and how much have you grown through, all the various experiences that you've had?
A lot. I had that really bad neck injury when that guy fell on my head. I tore several ligaments in my spinal column, interspinous and intertransverse ligaments. I blew 2 discs out so bad they were pinching my spinal cord. My whole left side of my body went numb. And then it started alternating left side and atrophied. I lost 26 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks. I didn't even know who I was anymore. It took me 8 years to rehabilitate myself, and to this very day, I still have to be really careful about how I exercise and eat, and how having the right pillow, and I have a very, very unstable neck, but I fortunately had the skill to get to the point where I can still deadlift comfortably 405 pounds.
And you learn and do what you do. I mean,
Yeah.
I've obviously worked with you all these years. I've had a spinal fusion, blew out, obviously C6, 7, and got a herniation at C5, and all those different things as well. And it's like, I go to the gym and to me, it's that same thing. Well, okay, I can't do this, but what can I do?
Yeah, that's the surrounding the dragon technique.
Yeah.
That's what I teach.
With the times what we're going, a lot of people are going through right now, that I think that's a big question to ask, because I know it certainly helped me a hell of a lot. It's like, well, what can I do? And it's that thing, talking about that thought process of focusing on what do I love? What can I do?
Yeah.
What am I enjoying? And continually asking the right questions. It is repetition, and not attaching to negative thoughts that are going to come back in.
Yeah. There's one thing we can always do, aside from breathing, and there's a variety of things, but the one thing we can always do is find out who has been through the kind of crisis we're going through. So who's had a bad neck injury and how did they get through it? Who's had a business collapse? How did they get through it? There's nothing that human beings have experienced that some other human being hasn't experienced.
We're not that unique, are we?
No, so that's why I studied the biographies of over 100, and I imagine about 150 people now at least, because I'm always just mind-boggled at the kind of challenges that people like Picasso and Einstein and Madame Curie and Thomas Edison. I mean, look, this guy took 10,000 tries to make a light bulb. How many people would have given up at 92 or even 9, right? And so, what you see is that there's got to be some inherent spiritual value in the challenge of creativity, in the challenge of succeeding, in the challenge of becoming, or it has no meaning. I mean, if it was easy to win an Olympic gold medal, then nobody would give a shit. But if you look at all the challenges, the pain, the injuries, the strife, the financial burden that a world-class athlete has to go through to get there, you really realize when that gold medal's on, they know they earned it, and it means something, and it's changed that soul forever, and it changes all of us watching it happen. So to kind of close up, Gary, where are you at with PtEnhance now? Where can people learn more about it, and what is the offering? I know, what is it that for listeners that don't really understand what PtEnhance is other than a software system that allows you to manage your health and exercise type aspects of your business better. Give us a quick overview of what it is and what's available to them and where they should go look.
Yeah, well, firstly, PtEnhance.com. PT and then enhance, all one word, if you can understand my accent.
Yeah.
It's the
letter P, letter T, enhance, like personal trainer enhance.
Yeah, .com. And we're super excited. We've just launched a whole upgrade of our current platform, and we're starting the rebuild of a completely new platform from scratch, with integrating a lot more tools, particularly in the sales and marketing arena. The goal was always to give tools for health and fitness professionals and health coaching people. It's not just personal trainers or whatever. The health coaching industry is growing a lot, and there's a lot of need for digital support with that. So we have all sorts of different tools there already, and we're integrating a lot more for practitioners moving forward over these next period of time. So they can easily just go to the website, and we offer like a free 14-day trial to get on and just see what it's all about. We do weekly lives with our Brandon, who's our sales manager and success coach. Each week we do on Facebook, and it's not just about software, it's about helping health and fitness professionals shift their mindsets into a different paradigm of how they can generate different vertical revenue streams in their businesses and shift to a more scalable, sustainable, less vulnerable model for a health and fitness business.
Yeah, which, as we both know, is critical today.
Yeah, well, we've seen the industry's been decimated, and it's been cool. A lot of our guys have been on the. We got guys girls that have been with us for 13 years, and their businesses thrive through this. One of the guys, Cam Nell, I spoke to him the other day on the phone, and he's been with us since day dot, and it's been great to watch his progress. He's gone from just an average trainer to having multiple six-figure business and trainers working for him and stuff and different things. And I said, how are you going? He said, funny, I'm actually doing better than I was.
Yeah.
And he really didn't see any fall off because of how his business model was set up. So that's really what we're about, Paul. It's not just about software; it's about that helping.
And you have it set up so it works well on phones now, right?
Yeah, across all platforms, iPads, tablets, desktops, a phone as well. So you can pretty much do it across anything and everything. And that's part of the technology growth. Whatever, as technology moves. When we started, the iPhone doesn't exist. We launched in April of 2007, and the iPhone came out September 2007.
Right. The other thing about this PtEnhance platform is it literally lets you work anywhere you want to, anytime you want to.
Totally, and what we wanted to do as well, and I took on I know whether to call it the burden, but to help. The vision of our business is to help our customers or trainers, clients, to have good businesses and lifestyles.
Right.
So we've spent a lot of time and money and partnered with some great people in the fields of sales and marketing, and we've put a lot of automation tools in there to help practitioners not just picking up, generating leads, but also more nurturing those leads into becoming clients. We have all sorts of different automations that they can put together for programs to, you name it, to help to start to interact with people. Because one of the things in our society, the world nowadays, with this digital interface, we're exposed to so much information. Yeah. So it's really initially about even building a relationship.
Yeah.
So you can automate stuff through software to start building a relationship with potential clients that doesn't cost you any time or money once you've set it up.
Plus, things like reminder systems.
Exactly.
Remember to drink water. Remember to do your stretches.
Yep.
We got ... It's there's a lot of the other thing too is because you spent so many years working in at ground level, coaching and guiding and being a therapist, and you got the help of Czech professionals.
Yep.
Mark Latham would help you. So the people that helped you build it were also down in the trenches. And so you ended up really coming from a place of deep knowledge and contact with what you were working from as the foundation, as opposed to somebody who just decides out of the blue, okay, I'm going to open up a winery, but he used to be a mechanic, right?
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is you can tell when software is built by somebody that understands what they're making the software for versus software that was built by somebody who's got a concept, but they don't have any connection to it.
So true. And for me, I think the journeys that I went through in life, the pain, helped me to separate from my ego and my attachment to what I think it should be. And so it continues to evolve because we listen to our customers, listen to feedback and whatnot. And one of the early things I had to do with the guys was help them separate their attachment to what was being built to be able to accept that when people start using stuff, you're going to get feedback, and people are going to constantly give you feedback about things. And really, it's a beast that needs to grow.
Yeah.
So it's not about how I think it should be. And that was the same thing with business. And I have some great people around me and continue to connect with really great minds. And it's not my way. It's about getting good advice and about listening to people,
Yeah.
and then making an informed, logical decision and having input. And that's kind of how this is. That's why I see it as a beast, because it's not even really, it's software, but it's kind of this beast that I'm even now excited about all these different directions that it wants to grow.
Yeah.
So my job is to connect and help that grow and expand in that ways. And that's in turn what, a healthy business for a practitioner as well is about their clients' growth.
Yeah.
And how to help them grow in the different ways.
Well, what an amazing journey! I hope you guys listening have enjoyed it. It's a true story.
It is a true story.
It's a
I got the scars to prove it.
Yes, it's a very true story. And as you've heard, Gary and I, we grew up together in many ways. We've been through a lot of the same challenges, and had to cry on each other's shoulders, and both went through a midlife crisis at pretty much the same time. And looked at each other and said, "What have we created here?"
Holy fuck.
Jesus. I've created a monster. But it's a monster of our own love. So we trained the monster to be, shall we say, a good partner. And so for those of you, just again, a reminder, you can go to PtEnhance.com, have a look. And for those of you that aren't health and exercise professionals, what you can do is you can ask your trainer, if you're working one, or your therapist, have you ever heard of PtEnhance.com? There might be something there for you that could support you as their patient or their client. So there's another avenue, and you might want to go there just to check it out, because it might inspire you to realize what you're supposed to be doing with your life next.
The number one thing we get from practitioners and trainers when they start is they go, "Shit, why didn't I do this years ago? Why haven't I come here before?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, everything happens at the right time.
Yeah. All right, guys, lots of love. Thanks to our sponsors for all their love and support. Remember, whenever you buy anything through the ads and use your discount codes, you're supporting the podcast so that I can take the time and the energy and expend the resources to be able to get the guests, get them here, work with them, and try to give you the best education and entertainment that I can give you together. And thank you, Gary, for being a source of great education. And, hopefully it was entertaining.
Well, thanks. I've had fun.
Lots of love, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Living 4D with Paul Check and today's guest, Gary Crozier. You can find Gary and PtEnhance on Facebook at PtEnhance. Gary also has an amazing gift for Paul's listeners. You can get a PtEnhance account for free for life at PtEnhance.com/check-podcast. That gives you access to the PtEnhance resources and tools for one trainer with 2 clients. So visit PtEnhance.com/CHEK-PODCAST and sign up today. Don't forget to follow Paul on Instagram and Twitter at Living4D Podcast, or on his YouTube podcast channel, youtube.com/Living4D with Paul Check. You can watch more on Paul's blog at paulchecksblog.com and the Check Institute's brand new streaming media site, Checkiva.com.